What's good, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Notre Dame post-game show. And we today will be discussing, gentlemen, the 28-3 Notre Dame victory over Miami, Ohio, and what it means to the season, what it means to today, and your overall thoughts. And we'll break it down: offense, defense, special teams, all the fun stuff. And for all, again, final score was 28-3. So for all you degenerate gamblers out there, Notre Dame did not cover because I believe it was a 28-point spread. So sorry for your luck on that one, fellas. I'm sure that people were hoping that the great Steve Angeli was going to throw another touchdown pass and get that spread taken care of for you. But he did not, and they did not. So again, final score 28-3. Little anticlimactic there at the end. Both teams put their backups in, so with the game pretty much out of reach. But a lot to talk about in this one, boys. The beginning of this game, and I'll let you guys kind of give me your gut reactions, and that's kind of how we always do things around here in the post game show. But I tell you what, the game kind of started out very similarly as to the last home game that Notre Dame had against Northern Illinois. It just ended a little bit differently. So glad that Notre Dame got the W, but it feels like there is a bit of regression in a lot of areas, frankly. So we'll go around the horn, Brady Bunch style. Trevor, why don't you start us off and let us know what you thought, your overall gut reaction to Notre Dame's 28-3 win over Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, it was a weird game, man. It didn't feel like Notre Dame won 28-3. I think that's it didn't, but it did. I guess if that makes sense. I mean, it was a weird game to watch. It was frustrating. At the end of the day, I am happy with a win. I'm never going to be, more upset about a win than a loss. But there are some, I guess you'd call it moral losses in this one. It's weird, right? Because, if you would have told me, if I didn't watch the game and you guys would have texted me and said, hey, Riley Leonard had almost 300 total yards of offense, threw a passing touchdown, 3 total touchdowns. Defense held Miami of Ohio to no touchdowns and only 3 points allowed. It would have been great. But watching the game, 8 penalties for 66 yards, muffed punt, bad snap on a field goal, all things that I know we're going to dive into later. It was a very weird game. It was almost from drive to drive. It was one of those 1 step forward, 2 step back kind of thing. So lots to talk about, lot to dive into. My initial gut reaction: 1, happy with the win. 2, good things happen when you push the ball down the field, which, again, I know we'll dive more into later. But we'll see what happens throughout this week because there's a lot that needs to be corrected. But overall, a win's a win, I suppose. But Notre Dame can't have too many more of those types of wins. So,
Sean, hit us.
Yeah, Trevor, I think you hit the nail right on the head, and I'll just go ahead and add this quickly so we can get to double R. I just really think that they did show. I asked last week or 2 weeks ago, can they show me that they can play bad and win? They play bad and win. But as quickly as I say that, I look at Northern Illinois losing to Buffalo, and Miami, Ohio was just really, they're not good. They're not good, right? They came in as the worst rushing team in all of CFB, and they ran the ball. And that was disappointing. It is almost like this season is going to be, if Notre Dame is able to pull this together and somehow, some way, get into the playoffs, this is going to be one of the grittiest seasons in Notre Dame history. This is going to be a gutted out, gritty season for them to get to the playoffs. And I think that's a far departure from our expectations to start the season. And, I'm along here for the ride. I just don't see the juice. I see the juice from the sophomores, but like trying to find the juice from the captains and the seniors on this team, I don't know where it's at, but they're the ones that seem like they come out dead. I see Boubacar fired up. I saw Junior Tuilamaka coming off with his hair on fire early in the game, right? Christian Gray making plays. Drake Bowen amped up. Like I see the youngsters. I see the fire in the youngsters. I just don't see it in these veterans. And I think for whatever reason, Marcus Freeman has to, figure that out, have a meeting with the captains or something, man, because for the fire and the energy to be coming from the youngsters on the roster, that's not a good sign when it comes to, forecasting the rest of the season for this team.
Well, I mean, I think I'll work off of that first part real quick, Sean, because I think it's a good lead in, right? Is that I question the lack of leadership on this team right now. And that's not just from the players. And we'll talk about the 6-year seniors that we hoped would be dudes for this football team that just aren't playing like dudes. But I think it really starts from the top down. I mean, I typically go, I'm going to blame the adult in the room, not the kid in the room, right? Ultimately. So I wanted to start us out, Vince, because I know Trevor talked about a nice little blurb from Marcus Freeman before the pregame of Northern Illinois. I wanted to start us out here with the Miami, Ohio pregame, where Marcus Freeman said, and this is a little bit condensed because he had a long response to this, but basically he talked about the challenges that Miami, Ohio played. And his quote was, "They should be confident coming here. They have a defense that forces you to be methodical, and you have to understand that. We are going to do what they let us do." And my friends, you are the University of Notre Dame. You do not let Miami do what they do. You force them to be what you are, or you want them to be. Why the passive approach? The minute I heard that, Sean, I was like, because I went into this game feeling very confident that Notre Dame was going to come out on fire because of what happened 2 weeks ago. The minute I heard that quote, I was like, oh man, it's going to be a struggle bus today, isn't it? Like, it's going to be a struggle because this team played complacent. They played passive. Why did they do that? Because of what the head coach is putting into this program. I mean, like, at the end of the day, I look back at that quote and I'm like, why did Notre Dame play the way that they did today? Because I think they were prepared that way. They were told all week to take the play that's there. No, man, you be the aggressor. You go take the play. You don't take what they give to you. I hated that quote. Hated it. So if we're going to look at this performance, a 28-3 victory, it was one, and I think, Trevor, you said it was a win. It felt like a win, but it didn't actually feel like a win. It didn't. It did not feel like progress, in my opinion. Progress in the sense of you played poorly and won, but not progress in you played very well last week against Purdue. Now let's continue to play really well in a vacuum. You did not play well. And I think that there is a fundamental issue. And we're going to talk about the inconsistencies at quarterback. We're going to talk about offensive line regression. We're going to talk about a run defense that let up 75 yards in the first down and let up 5 yards per carry to a team that was averaging 1.4 yards a carry coming to this football game. We're going to talk about all that, guys, but I've come back to this multiple times over the last couple of weeks. There is a fundamental issue here that we are choosing to ignore. And instead of talking about the actual issue, the bigger issue, the full landscape issue, we're focusing on one player. We're focusing on two players, maybe three players. We're passing blame on single entities when there is the only single entity at Notre Dame is Notre Dame. And there is an issue at the University of Notre Dame right now.
When you say we, are you talking about fans or are you talking about us? Because we talked about the fundamental issue like all week after the NIU game. Like, I
think it's a collective a little bit. No, I'm not talking about us in particular. I think that we have been very fair in the blame. I'm saying as a collective, there are far too many people. I shouldn't have made it an absolute, Vince. My apologies. Like there is far too many people that are choosing to blame one player or even two players or three players when in my opinion, there is a much larger issue here. And yeah, we could talk about, let's see this one player more. Let's see these two players more. And maybe that will be a small Band-Aid, but I don't think that outlasts the overall bigger issue. And I think that issue was shown to me before the game even started. When I heard that pregame speech, I'm like, that's a problem, man. That's a problem. When did Notre Dame become the passive reactive program? When did they stop being the aggressor? When did they stop being the dictator? When did they stop? Against Miami, Ohio? We weren't playing Ohio State today. We weren't playing Georgia today. We were playing Alabama today. We were playing a team that you should have treated like you were going to beat their you-know-what in. Like, that's how you should have treated this football team, and you treated them as equals, and you treated them reactionary. And I dislike the whole process here.
And Vince, I just want to jump in because I've been looking at the chat, and Double R, I couldn't be more disappointed. because of what you said. It goes right into what I'm seeing in the chat. We have been put into a place or settled into a place, even as a fan base, that will say it was 3 points. The yards don't matter. See, that's what Notre Dame is right now. They're not chasing excellence. They're chasing the team they're facing. They don't have a Notre Dame standard. We just need to beat the team in front of us. Well, if you have a standard of excellence, it doesn't matter who you're facing because we're playing to our standard. And no matter who the opponent is, we're going to kick their tail. We're going to physically maul them. We're going to dominate defensively. We're going to run the ball, and we're going to make big plays down the field in the passing game. That's our standard. That should be the speech from Marcus Freeman every week. Erase the schedule off the boards in the locker room. Doesn't matter who we're playing because our intensity is going to be the exact same every week. This is the standard. That's where it is at Georgia. That's where it was under Nick Saban in Alabama. You talking about winning a national championship, buddy? That's where you have to get to as a program. This up and down based upon the schedule and the opponent, that's unacceptable. And it brings the fan base to a point to be we only gave up 3 points. To the worst rushing offense in college football. What is the standard? You're 2 All-Pros at defensive tackle. Where are you? How are you giving up 5 yards? That's unacceptable. I don't care. Dude, we all knew. I predicted Miami, Ohio wasn't going to go double digits in points. They're bad. They're bad. But we have settled into a place to accept things that are not at the level of championship football. That's not championship football, man. That's not. That's not getting it done. And it's the 3rd year of this regime. We have to start seeing some hints of championship caliber football. That's the expectation. That was the expectation. I didn't care who the quarterback was this year. I needed to see this program playing at a level of championship caliber football, period. We forget about...
Sean, can I say one thing real quick? And then I know we don't want this to be this type of show, right? So we're going to move on to the positives, to the negatives, and we're going to break it all down, Vince. I apologize. I know you're steering the ship, but we're taking it off the rails a little bit.
You guys are good. I was going to bring it back. Don't worry.
Yeah. This is my point, is that I kind of hope, and sounds crazy for me, right? I kind of hope Notre Dame makes a quarterback change at this point. I wish they would make a quarterback change because we are going to see a different looking product, but that major issue is still going to be the same. It's still going to be there, man. We can pretend like it's not going to be, but that isn't the reason that Notre Dame comes out awful, no energy for a football game, man. We can pretend like it is, but I kind of hope that Notre Dame just goes to Steve Angeli at some point and we can see what it looks like because
come on, man.
I think, Vince, eventually we can have a real conversation here because then when it's passing games better, but run game stalls out a little bit and we're still kind of limited and we still don't play well in the biggest moments, then we can finally have the conversation of like, oh, maybe it's not just the quarterback. Maybe there's an actual issue here that we're just using.
Anybody that knows how to watch football knows that's not the answer. We don't have to put him on the field to have that conversation. Like we know that that's exactly what would happen. You know what I mean? Anybody that knows anything about football knows that would be the outcome if they did that. So I don't need to see it. Like I don't need to see it, right? I don't need to see that my kids are going to be upset if my wife and I get a divorce. We don't need to do it just to see how it happens. Like that. I'm sorry.
It's not about the quarterback. We knew that coming into the season. This season was never about the quarterback. We know who the more dynamic quarterback on the roster is. We don't even have to have that debate. That's not the point. There's bigger issues, and every week there are holes popping in the dam. We think we plug one, and another one pops open over here. And then we have to use our leg to get this one over here. And then we're having to use our other foot to plug this one over here. By the end of the season, we're not going to have enough limbs to be able to cover everything. That is the direction this is going. If the things that Trevor and Ryan pointed out don't get fixed at the core of the issue. At the core of the issue. And it's bigger than just the players. It goes up the tree. It flows up. Usually things slow down because of gravity. Well, in Notre Dame's position, things definitely are going up if you want to figure out what's really wrong right now. But I need to see them win a game that they played bad. I needed to see that.
Fair.
I needed to see that. As
Fair.
Marcus Freeman after the game said, we faced adversity in this game. He's right. Most of it was self-inflicted, though. Most of it was self-inflicted.
Agreed.
Because I don't think Miami, Ohio they never had anything that could really threaten Notre Dame. They didn't. So the adversity was self-inflicted. They overcame it, and they were able to win the game. For me, that's something that I needed to see, and I think it bodes well going into this next matchup where this is the crazy thing. I don't think they're going to have a problem finding energy next week. I don't.
They won't. He gets them
I
up
don't
for the
either.
big games.
I don't
Look,
know.
He
it's
gets
the
them up for the
opponent.
big games. We know this. This
But-
is not new.
Yeah.
We talked about this, right? It's the roller coaster. And you can't be a consistently good football team if that is how you are going to approach each game in a roller coaster of emotion. Like you can't do it. This team came out flat. They came out as flat as you could possibly come out against a team that's really not that good, right? They're not that good. They're 0-3 now. Like they're not that good. You guys have said it. They can't run the ball, but they did against Notre Dame. Okay. Bottom line, they did. They ran the ball when they needed to. Now, the difference, I guess, in this game as opposed to Northern Illinois is that in big moments, Notre Dame kind of stepped up and stopped them from running, right? They stopped them on what? It was a 4th down, I want to say, and got a turnover on downs. They weren't doing that against Northern Illinois. So, okay, I guess we put a little itty-bitty check mark there as progress. But the problem is, and I love your analogy, Sean, about plugging the holes in the dam and then more holes keep appearing. That's accurate in my opinion. Like I was never, as I was watching this game, and I kind of watched it on fast forward. I was just literally watching the plays and then hitting fast forward and watching another play and hitting fast forward while driving. So that was fun. But it never felt to me that Notre Dame was going to lose this game. I never got that. I never felt that, right? And frankly, I never had that feeling in the Northern Illinois game until the final drive, to be perfectly honest with you, okay? But I never had that feeling today because Notre Dame was doing enough to score, right? The 4th drive that Notre Dame had offensively, it was a good drive. You know, you could say, okay, they can obviously do it, and then they did it a few more times. But the fundamental problem, and I agree with all of you on that, the fundamental problem is bigger than any one position, Ryan. I completely agree with you on that. So the fact that anybody is even having a conversation about who you need to bench and who you need to bring in, that's not the issue here, okay? That's not the issue. And we'll get into the quarterback and we'll get into all of those things when we start talking about the offense, right? But gut reaction is we have seen this team play down to lesser opponents way too many times under Marcus Freeman. It is a major, major problem. You wouldn't think that after what happened 2 weeks ago, that you would have to go to any extreme measures to get this team up for this game. You wouldn't think so, right? It almost feels like he went into the room and he's like, guys, I know you're excited about this game, but I want you to tone it down a little bit. Like, that's what it felt like. I know you're excited to play at home in front of your friends and family, but let's bring it down a notch. Like, it's almost like he's forcing these kids to not be excited to play the game of football. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what it feels like. I don't even know how you can come out in this game and not be fired up to just show people that 2 weeks ago, you know, was an anomaly or whatever the motivation, the internal motivation that you need, right? It felt like it was sucked out of them for some reason, and they just didn't do it. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. And I also agree with you guys that next week against Louisville, they're going to come out fired up. And there's a good chance that they blow the doors off of Louisville. There's a decent chance that happens because I just don't know who this team is. They play great against good teams. They play awful against bad teams. So at this point, they may lose to Army and they may lose to Navy, but they'll beat USC and Louisville. Like I just don't understand. I just don't understand this team, guys. I just don't. Do you guys have anything else before we dive into offense?
No, Vince.
That was my venting for the week. That was my venting right there.
Take us to the offense, Vince. Take us to the offense. Quarterback this.
Let's do it. All right, boys. Offense. Obviously, the offense did not start out very well. They didn't even get the ball back when they should have gotten the ball back because of, and we'll talk about, we're gonna have a special teams segment too. Don't worry, we're gonna talk special teams because that was ugly, and I love talking special teams, obviously. But offensively, guys, the first 3 drives, if I'm not mistaken, they did not go well, and I'm gonna look it up here. So for Notre Dame's first drives, let's see here. 3 plays and a punt, 5 plays, turnover on downs, 3 plays and a punt. And that was all for a grand total of 40 yards. Okay. In the first 3 drives. That's 2 in the first quarter and the first in the second. So offense did not get started very well. I will pass it off. We'll go opposite direction this time. Ryan, thoughts on the offense?
I think that we saw the offensive line have its major struggles today overall. I think that especially the left side, which again, man, like there's always going to be those ups and downs, just kind of working forward to the back here for a second. But I thought that Anthony Knapp's, he was okay today. Not as bad as last week, but still not overly good. I mean, like below average, I'd say. Sam Pendleton had a rough one as we kind of dig into this offensive line. I think the offensive line just in general played below average. I thought Riley Leonard showed a lot of progress working down the field. I mean, he forced a couple pass interference calls. He had the nice throw to Bo Collins. If the first pass interference to Mitchell Evans isn't grabbed, that's a beautiful ball and a huge play down the middle of the field. So I think it's progress there. He is a enigma as a quarterback, though, because the misses on the short throws, what we call give-me's, is just so frustrating, man. Yeah. Like, it just is. Riley Leonard needs to be a lot better short. Like, it was just a very ugly game from the short passing game, and that's on Riley, ultimately. I don't think the wide receivers played bad. I think they played okay. I thought they had their moments. I think Riley Leonard let them down in catch and run situations in the short area of the field. I thought the running backs were okay, were good, but like they're a victim to the fact that the offensive line didn't play overly well. I mean, that's a very situational thing, right? Riley Leonard is a great athlete. We know that, but the short to intermediate passing game just was not good today. It was bad. It was a major issue, especially in catch and run situations. That needs to get better. So, I mean, just overall, I thought most groups played average to below average today. And that's why we saw the struggles. Unfortunately, especially early on in the game, there were just a couple misses, man, where you're just like, that's easy. Like that, you like just routine stuff, the outs, the easy comebacks. Like you need to make those throws. Funny enough, the Bo Collins throw was a great throw. The throw to Mitchell Evans was good. He threw a dig to Chris Mitchell, which I thought was money. He threw an RPO to Bo Collins, which had pace and was incredible throw. So there was some really good throws on the day, but the short intermediate pass, if you're going to be this methodically driven offense, this offense that just needs to have a bunch of plays to score most of the time and not create a ton of explosives, you have to be better on the give-me's. The home runs, they need to be easy, right? Like the freebies, the free throws. Like you need to be able to take and make that easy stuff easy all the time. And the Notre Dame offense, Riley Leonard obviously very much included in that at a high level. They did not make the easy things easy today. They made it very hard. There were penalties across. It was just a very sloppy football game offensively today.
And I'll take the point of view from the coordinator position. It has to be frustrating. Mike Denbrock knows football, man. Mike Denbrock knows how to call games. He knows how to make up different schemes. He knows how to attack defenses. Has to be very frustrating to come out with a plan that was obvious to get your quarterback comfortable. And then for him to be erratic with the easy throws. And now you have to figure out, okay, what can we go to now? He's not comfortable, but I still have to get this offense going, right? And I'm trying to get him comfortable long-term as I evolve this passing game and evolve this offense, right? And I'm sure coming into the season, this offense is nowhere near where he expected it to be by this point in the season. So I can only imagine, when he goes and looks at the film and starts to prepare for Louisville, and he's starting to formulate, man, can I trust this? Can I trust these throws early in the game? I have to. We have to go over it over and over again in practice to make sure that it's down. But, I'm sure his play calling is impacted in some way, form, or fashion, or the formulation of his plan by the offensive line. not being consistent, by the quarterback being inconsistent, and by other things, the wide receivers not getting open. I saw a couple of wide receivers run in the same area on a couple of routes, and it's like, okay, I know this wasn't designed to go this way. So it's one of those things where you just feel bad. I feel bad for the offensive coordinator, but you know what? That's why you're that dude. Figure it out. Figure it out. You, along with the head coach and the rest of that offensive staff, figure it out, because there is a formula somewhere in there, simple, more complex, wherever it is, and wherever it settles, there's a formula somewhere in there where you can come together and win games with this team. You have the talent. He's a dynamic runner. You know that. We've seen that. They're really good inside the red zone. Why? Because that's when his legs really come into play. The issue is consistently getting to the red zone. So, and then Trevor pointed it out. Like, look what happens when you just do. Miami, Ohio, their safeties was literally squatting at 8 to 9 yards. Like the Bo Collins and then the Chris Mitchell post, if they got the pass interference, it was like the safety was not even paying attention to Chris Mitchell on the outside. And it was, I'm like, yo, teams are daring you week after week after week to do it. So you just have to do it. And you have to give your guys an opportunity. The slot fade to Harrison, yeah, it should have been on his outside shoulder.
He wasn't open, though. He wasn't open.
Well, better ball. He could have had an opportunity, but
50-50 ball no matter what. I mean,
yeah, but having to go over the back of the defender, I would much rather have to fade to my right to where the defender's not in play. If I had my choice. But like I said, I'm nitpicking, right? So, but that's one of those things like, you have to run a better route, separate, do what you have to do, either stack the guy or like fade. And then the quarterback has to read that and throw it to the outside. But those are things that have to come together. And you have to have an urgency about it. This offense doesn't have any urgency, man. They don't have a Jeff Fain that's like, yo, in the middle of the huddle, forget the quarterback. I'm going to get everybody straight. Like who? Because you're expecting a guy who literally just got here months ago to be that guy, to be the energy. Like his running game is that energy. His plays out of structure are that energy, but the consistency offensively and the energy of where's that coming from? Who is it coming from? And usually at Notre Dame, it comes from that offensive line, because the offensive line is usually what you can depend on week after week, right? And unfortunately, because of injury, that hasn't been the case. So, hopefully moving forward, offensive staff can come up with something. Yeah, I guess that Marcus Freeman is comfortable with, moving forward to play to the style of the game that they want to play to as a team.
I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head with the consistency piece. And I think the comes from not just the play calling, and I think it's everything. The lack of consistency with the personnel groupings that are on the field, the lack of consistency with the type of plays that you're choosing to run, the lack of consistency with Riley Leonard missing a 4-yard flat route to Cooper Flanagan, but putting a 17-yard dig route on the money to Chris Mitchell. I think that's what's tough. For me, I don't like when teams pick and choose when to be aggressive. I understand that there's calculated risks and everything. I get that. But Notre Dame won the coin toss and elected to defer. It's stuff like that. You're playing against an 0-2 team at home. Take the ball, drive down the field. It's things like that. But then at the end of the first half, you're calling timeouts and using timeouts to try to get the ball back. And then an unfortunate penalty happens. Frustrating, right? Stuff that I know we'll continue to talk about. But you can't pick and choose when to be aggressive. Like I've seen a lot of people in the chat talk about your identity and what you want to be. Be that all the time, not when it's convenient or when it's like, well, I guess we probably should now. If that's who you are, then be who you are. You know what I mean? As far as the offense specifically today, I bring up personnel groupings because I look at the third drive of the game. You start out in the backfield. I mean, I think at this point, Jeremiah Love had let's see, two touches going into the third drive of the game. And then you start out lining up in the backfield with Aeneas Williams, who's a true freshman, and Devin Ford on first down. Design QB run, goes for 3 yards, goes nowhere. Jeremiah comes into the game, loses 3 yards on a rush, and then it's a 3rd and 11 draw to Devin Ford. It's like little questions like that I have that I just don't understand. Next drive, you come back out, you have the correct personnel on the field. You have a good use of motion. You have diversity in your play calling. You march down the field, you get Riley Leonard into the red zone, which is where he's the best, right? So it's that level of inconsistency that's tough. I mean, no disrespect to Notre Dame's opponents that they've played so far this year, but I'm sure that we can all collectively agree that from Northern Illinois to what we just watched today, it was more of a Notre Dame versus Notre Dame type of, right? And so I think what's frustrating the most for me, and Sean and Ryan, you guys both brought it up earlier, is you can't consistently shoot yourself in the foot. You know, we brought it up when we were going through gut reactions of, yes, 30-yard run, cool, punched out fumble, right? It's, okay, fantastic. We're moving the ball down the field. We're driving it. Sack puts us out of it. You know, now Notre Dame's in no man's land. You can't really go for it on 4th down because it's too far, but you can't kick the field goal because it's out of range. So I think those levels of inconsistencies lead us to being frustrated where the offense is at, which leads into the Notre Dame's offense doesn't have an identity. But the things that they did well today is they did let Riley Leonard push the ball down the field. And don't let the stats frustrate you. I'm not here to say that Riley Leonard played a perfect game. I'm not. And I know that any slight of positivity in Riley Leonard's way is just me thinking he's going to go win the Heisman, right? But pushing the ball down the field creates opportunities, one-on-one matchups for your wide receivers.
How many times did they throw the ball down the field, Trevor?
4 times. One was a 38-yard touchdown. The 3 others were defensive pass interferences. Good things happen when you push the ball down the field because that's what everybody wanted.
So how can people be upset? Is it just in that part, in that angle of his game? How can people be upset when he threw the ball down the field 4 times and 4 good things happened? I'm just saying, how can you be upset? This is what you guys wanted. They did it. 4 good things happened, and yet he needs to be benched.
No, I hear you. And I think, unfortunately, the narrative is it wasn't the good thing that people wanted. It wasn't 4 deep shots.
All right, he didn't go out and
4
throw for 350
right.
yards. That's the problem. Like, that's what people wanted. They wanted him to be a pocket passer, and they want him to throw the ball down the field a bunch, and they want him to be a 95% completion percentage quarterback. And that was never going to be the case, everybody. That was look, as I think it was either Ryan or Sean, apologize. He needs to hit the layups. There's no doubt about it. He needs to hit the layups. But he is progressing because he is throwing the ball down the field, and he still threw for 64% completion percentage. He still accounted for 300 yards of total offense today. So, I mean, if a quarterback is responsible for 3 touchdowns, 300 yards of total offense, I mean, isn't that wouldn't normal people be happy with that?
A college kid still needs to be coached, Vince.
Agreed.
Who knew?
Okay.
Who knew?
Right.
That a kid coming into a new system needed to be coached.
Right.
Needs to have things shaped around his gifts and talents so he can come in comfortably and then evolve as a player. Who knew? Yes. Gino Gaduli. You still there? I haven't seen you on the sideline. This is where you come into play. I do feel like there was urgency and a message put across to him. And I'm into Trevor Double R. Please jump in on this. It seemed like there was an urgency and a message sent to Riley. We're calling the play, throw the ball. This is the first read. That's the look you're going to get. Throw the ball. Throw it deep. Don't even think about it. Drop back, throw it. The one thing I love that showed me that was put into his mind when they got the offsides, he threw it deep. He didn't check it down. He didn't take off running. He took the shot. And I'm like, okay, something's gotten across to him to be a little bit more aggressive. Go ahead, take the shot. Don't worry about, because this could be that trickle-down effect that Double R was talking about or insinuating. It seems to be a trickle-down effect of we don't want to make a mistake. We don't want to make the mistake. Be careful. right? And that affects the play caller, that affects the quarterback. Heck, it affects the energy of the entire team. Like, yo, just go out there and play football, man. You're the better team. 90% of the time you take the field this year. Maybe 100% of the time. Really, if you want to be honest. So now it's about you. If you play the way you're supposed to play football, the scoreboard is not an issue. Now it's about how well we're going to play. Because we're the better team. We know that every time we take the field. We're the most talented team.
That's it'll be that way every game for the rest of the season.
For the rest of
the regular season.
Man. Absolutely. So I did love it. I think a message got across to him when we call these plays, take the shot, we'll deal with the repercussions. Like, just take the shot.
Yeah.
And if he continues to grow and do that, I think the offense will get better. Offense will get better as far as being aggressive.
Right. And I don't want to harp on just the quarterback because there's other parts of the offense that obviously we need to talk about, right? He hit some of the short stuff last week. He hit the long stuff this week. He's shown that he can do it. He hit the short stuff in the middle of the game. People seem to forget about that, of course. But, like, he got into a rhythm where he was hitting the short throws and things like that. So, look, he has the ability to. Mm-hmm. He just has to pull it all together, okay? So, at the end of the day, 300 yards of total offense, 3 touchdowns. I'm okay with it. I'm not saying that I'm like, yes, Riley Leonard for Heisman. He's the best quarterback I've ever seen. Like, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is we did see some progress. That's all. That's what we asked for, right? We asked for progress for Riley Leonard. We saw it. Now, there were some really dumb penalties or some really bad penalties, some pre-snap penalties, holding penalties, just some bad stuff. Like, the offense as a whole is not really gelling at this point for whatever reason, right? The offensive line is still super young. You got 2 new starters in there that you had to play with, obviously. Sam Pendleton had a rough day. He had a really rough day. He and to be honest with you, Anthony Knapp still can't pass block. And I realize that's not why he won the starting job, but let's talk offensive line here for a little bit, guys. Hopefully you were able to watch the offensive line a little bit. It's easier for me when I go back and watch the film and everything, obviously, to watch offensive line. Sam Pendleton stuck out for all the wrong reasons today. There's no doubt about it. I feel like the left side is struggling in pass protection as well. The right side's doing yeoman's work in pass blocking. I think Emil Wagner's quietly having a great season, to be honest with you. And when he started limping around, I got real worried, to be perfectly honest with you. Thank goodness he stayed in, and I watched him specifically over the next few plays, and he seemed like he was still anchoring well and doing fine. So I think he's probably going to be fine. But offensive line guys, like, if you want to give your quarterback an opportunity to, settle in and be confident and all that, the offensive line's not really doing him any favors. I'll just say that in the pass game.
I mean, I started out with like kind of the overview. I'll just hit on it real quick, right? Is that there's 2 new starters in the lineup from last week, obviously, with Rocco Spindler starting at right guard and now Pat Coogan taking over at center. But guys, the 2 new starter thing is such a weak pass. I mean, it is, because those guys each had 10 and 13 starts under their belts, right? Overall. Fair. So yes, 2 new starters, but like, let's enjoy context a little bit, right? I think that Emil Wagner, for me, was the best offensive lineman for today. I think that his hustle and play on the backside was very good on several runs. I think that he is continuously growing before our eyes. So, like, shout out to Emil Wagner. I think he's playing good football. Rocco Spindler seemed solid to me, just kind of on the plain view. I'm looking forward to obviously going back, because these conversations are always a little bit limited until you watch all 22 for offensive linemen, right? So, like, but Rocco seems solid. Pat Coogan seems solid. The left side had a bad day. I mean, it did. I mean, Sam Pendleton in his 4th career start, I think, had probably his worst game. Yeah. But again, it's his 4th career start. So I expect him to be better moving forward. And honestly, sometimes failure is good. I mean, we don't want to accept that, but like sometimes baptism by fire and failure can really make you a much better player. And he's a redshirt freshman. So I expect Sam Pendleton to play a lot better over the course of the season, but he had a bad day today. And I think Anthony Knapp for the 2nd straight week is showing again why he's a true freshman starting at left tackle at the University of Notre Dame. There's going to be struggles littered in there, There are some good reps, but I thought overall, yes, the left side was definitely the issue for the Notre Dame offensive line today.
How about we talk about the skill guys for the offense? Let's talk wide receivers, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the running backs. So wide receivers, fellas, your thoughts on the pass catcher. You can add in tight ends as well, because obviously they were involved in the passing game as well. So thoughts on the pass catchers today. Trevor, I'll let you kick this one off.
I know the stat sheet won't reflect it too much, but Chris Mitchell is starting to come into his own a little bit, I think. They brought it up in the broadcast that Chris Mitchell had a really good week of practice, and I thought he was getting in and out of breaks really well today. You're starting to see that explosiveness that everybody talked about when he was at Florida International, right? And I've said it, like we all have throughout the course of the season. Bo Collins is that Mr. Consistent guy. I mean, he is slowly becoming Riley Leonard's most comfortable receiver to throw to. I would like to see a little bit more of Jaden Greathouse getting involved, scheming him open a little bit, because I feel like
I didn't even see him today.
I know.
I didn't even see.
Yeah, he was not around apparently. Yeah.
No,
the only time I saw him was when he was trying to collect that fumble and didn't.
Yeah.
Like that was the only time I remember seeing him.
Riley had a good throw to him on 3rd and long.
Yes, he did.
Hit him over the middle.
That one. Yeah.
Hit him over the middle. It was a really good throw.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I think some of that just might be me needing to share my expectations of all of the preseason hype around Jaden Greathouse coming into his own, and he's going to be the next, I guess the next big receiver in college football. Kind of some of the hype that was coming in around him when Notre Dame brought in more veteran players who had more snaps. That wasn't coming off of an injury-riddled season from last year. So some of that might be me needing to table my expectations a little bit with him. But Mike Denbrock, Sean, to your point, is a really good offensive coordinator. I think he could do a few more things with scheming him open, but overall, I think skill positions today were fine. Some of the routes that they were running were a little bit like stagnant. I don't think I've still never been a fan of, and this is with any team. This isn't just with Notre Dame. If it's 3rd and 6, I don't understand why we're running routes that are not beyond the sticks. That's just me. That might be a personal preference thing. I've always found that to be a little weird. Understand trusting your playmakers to get open and break something open, but I think that's weird. 3rd and 8 running a 6-yard route, I think is odd.
Can I shout out Bo Collins real quick? Because Bo Collins is easily the best receiver on this team. It's not even remotely close right now.
Close.
His touchdown throw, good route, good throw, but I really want to highlight that on Bo because I put it on Twitter. So there's a thing called a green line or a sight line when you're running a deep ball, right? It's basically a path to make sure that you're not fading too far inside or you're not fading too far to the outside. I thought he did a great job not fading one way or the other, man, because when you're going on a deep ball outside the numbers, it's very easy to lose track of the sidelines sometimes, right? I thought that was a great route by Bo. I thought he did a really good job maintaining that leverage and that sight line all the way through the route. It was a good throw and an easy catch, obviously, right? So I think Bo has been obviously the best receiver on this team, man. And, even when he wasn't getting the ball, I thought that I saw number 5 pretty consistently open. So Bo Collins has probably been the best transfer portal pickup this year, right? Like, I don't even think it's close, honestly. Like, he's been very good for Notre Dame, in my opinion.
Yeah, and speaking of wide receivers, I think it goes back to what we said. The wide receiver position, they have been inconsistent, but yet still they have been infected by the inconsistency at offensive line and the inconsistency at quarterback. It's all connected, man. It's all part of the same poisonous tree. So they seem to be getting better. And since the Texas A&M game, Bo Collins is definitely, from the jump, has been that guy, right? And I think Riley looks at him as being that guy. And I think Chris Mitchell, as Trevor has pointed out, they mentioned on the broadcast how his practices have gotten much better and how he practiced this week. Now he's starting to emerge, right? The late interception against Northern Illinois was the same post route opportunity that he got today. It was just late and underthrown. So he's going to continue to be a factor. And Trevor mentioned something. I think at the wide receiver position now, they just need to lock in the 3 guys. I understand whoever those 3 to 4 guys are going to be, let them get into the ball game, right? Because right now, I have to be honest. Jaden Thomas wouldn't be in my top 4 at wide receiver right now.
He missed a pretty crucial block at one point that I remember.
Oh, yes. I remember that play.
Oh, man.
On the screen.
They set him a beautiful screen.
Beautiful screen to Jeremiah. Yes.
If he just keeps his block,
yes,
Love may still be running.
Yes.
Oh, is that when Love got smacked, right?
Yeah.
By the guy that Thomas was supposed to block. Now, most of the time he's a good blocker, but on that particular play, he definitely was not.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, when you talk about the inconsistency of wide receiver, there are some bright spots that continue to emerge. You love that. I would like to see Michael Gilbert get an opportunity, just his size and athleticism. But, we'll see, right? And once again, this goes back to what I said about the mind of Mike Denbrock. He knows what he's doing, but he's trying to, plug holes and still evolve the offense as he tries to kind of like, okay, how can I help out the left side of the offensive line right here? Because they're struggling today. All right. He's good intermediate today and deep ball, but the short stuff, he's not good today. I would love to see a lot of waggle, play action, right? Use his athleticism.
Yeah,
but
I agree with
Riley really hasn't shown to be that accurate on the run.
Which is very odd because he was extremely accurate on the run when he was at Duke.
Yeah, so now is it mental for him? These are the things.
He's aiming the ball for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely aiming the ball. He definitely his wind up seems very long, like a pitcher. It definitely looks like he's aiming the ball. So it has to be mental at this point. And I was sad to see that as he took the field, Notre Dame fans were saying things. It's just like, is that where we are now as a fan base? But he has thick skin. I think he's a tough kid. He has thick skin. And Marcus Freeman stuck with him. I'm glad Marcus Freeman stuck with him today.
Yeah.
I really am. I'm glad he stuck with him. I think this is going to be medicine for Riley Leonard, mentally and physically, if he is who I think he is as a kid and a young man. And I think he's going to come out and play really well next week. I do. I really do.
I think this whole team's going to play well next week, but that's a different conversation which also plays into the hand of why we think there's bigger issues. But, I digress. Trevor, go ahead. Did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, Sean, you brought up an interesting point about like getting some of the younger guys involved. Micah Gilbert, I saw somebody in the chat put in Cam Williams. And I think it's weird that wide receiver is the only position group on the team, I feel like, where there's kind of a tighter leash on putting in some of the young guys. I noticed that Benjamin Morrison latter half of the fourth quarter wasn't in, and Leonard Moore was there. It would have been really easy to just put out Jaden Mickey and Christian Gray, and Leonard Moore's in there. You're rotating in a bunch of young linebackers that Kingston is a true freshman getting an insane amount of playing time. It's great. You chose to start Anthony Knapp at left tackle, a true freshman, over somebody who's been a part of the program for the last 5 years. Aeneas Williams is coming in on third downs and making good plays. I want to know what it is about the wide receiver room specifically, why they're kind of holding that back, because that's the only one for me, which I think is interesting. But no, Sean, I just wanted to touch on that because you brought up rotating in Micah Gilbert, who's somebody that I've been waiting to see out there too.
Heck, our boy Carson Hobbs almost had a pick.
Yeah,
today.
man.
Carson with a K in the chat, by the way, guys. Let's make sure we spell it correctly. Carson with a K.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. Let's talk running game, fellas. Let's talk about the running backs. Obviously, Notre Dame was able to put up 270 yards on the ground. Let's see here. As far as the running backs, Love had 60 yards on 11 carries. Jadarian Price had 39 yards on 6 carries. So that's 5.5 and 6.5 yards a carry, respectively. And then, of course, you had Devin Ford, who had 5 for 21, and then Aeneas Williams had a couple down the stretch. So your thoughts on the ball carriers, and I suppose you could, mention Riley Leonard here because he obviously was primarily a ball carrier, and it is what it is. So opinions on the ball carriers, folks.
Obviously, Jeremiah Love is he's so quick, man. It's almost like there's no wasted motion when he's running. Honestly, and I'm not one to say take carries away from number 4 in the backfield. I don't know if you guys caught on to it, but Jadarian Price was running with a little bit of extra something today. I don't know what it was, but he was hitting holes hard. Running game as a whole, I just think that some of the run blocking assignments were sloppy today. A lot of offensive linemen at the start of the play were letting their face get crossed pretty quickly. It's tough when you run like a zone concept and you're getting your face crossed. Like it's when you're beat there. Luckily, you have 2 very explosive, very quick running backs in Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price who are able to make cuts pretty quickly in the hole. But more of a personal preference for me. But Jadarian Price felt like he was coming off the ball with a little bit of extra something today, a little bit of extra pop. So would have liked to see him get a little bit more than 6 touches. But, I mean, run game as a whole, I know a lot of people are wanting, what's this team's identity and what's this team's identity. And it is running the football, guys. It is. And it might not be the outcome that we want. I think Notre Dame has an identity. It's just not a consistent one. But Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock have been consistent in saying, hey, we're going to run the ball first. And that's what we're looking to do. Riley Leonard went back-to-back 100-yard games. I said on the broadcast that was the first Notre Dame quarterback to do that since Carlisle Holiday, and obviously we know how explosive 4 and 24 are. So run game as a whole, offensive line needs to play better because they have a tall order next week against Louisville. But I would say overall, running backs look good. Riley Leonard looked good in the run game. I don't think that's anything new for anybody. Just offensive line needs a little bit of cleanup, more fire off the ball for sure.
Yeah, I watched a really good Louisville defensive line hold up really well against a really good Georgia Tech offensive line. So you're right, Trevor. That task next week against that defensive front is going to be a tall one. And they're going to have to grow up. That left side they're going to have to take their medicine from the past 2 weeks. They're going to have to grow up. They're going to have to take on the challenge, and they're going to have to fight and compete from 4 quarters because it's going to be a tall task. I don't know if the defensive line is as good as the one they faced their very first start in college football, but it's going to be pretty good. And all you're asking them to do is compete and hold up. Don't get outplayed. Be simple. Like you said, we're running a stretch play. Just don't allow yourself to get your face to get crossed. That's it. Mm-hmm. Just hold up as much as you can and give our running backs and their talent a chance to do what they do, right? And once again, the running back game is always there. It's always going to look good in spurts. I'm very interested as you come behind me, Double R, because I know you guys talked about it in the thread a little bit during the game. But this goes back to my point with Mike Denbrock, man. I'm sure he would love to get the tempo, man, right? But it's like, if you have an inconsistent left-sided offensive line, like, can I trust them if I go tempo? Or do I need to slow the game down to make sure I try to get them to settle down? It's just so many things he's having to think about. I think he has it in the game plan to get to it. But sometimes because of the way things flow, he's having to kind of correct things on the fly and get things comfortable and get the offense comfortable. So I don't know if the running game is really going to get to a point. I think I talked about Jagasaw, but Ashton Craig and Billy Schrauff, those were 2 huge injuries, man.
Oh, yeah.
Those are huge. Like we talk about those 2 on the inside, especially for the running game. And like you said, Pat Coogan for the most part today and Rocco, they were solid.
Yeah, I thought Rocco played well.
They were solid, but it was, Billy Schrauff and Ashton Craig, you lost your 2 best offensive linemen. And along with Emil Wagner, who's been solid, but those are 2 guys that were playing really well, right? And that's who they ran behind in Texas A&M in that game. So, you don't have your closers now on the offensive line in the running game. So moving forward, I'm very interested in seeing how Mike Denbrock uses different counters. I didn't see 21 today. See, that needs to be a staple, man. Like, what are we doing? That needs to be a staple. Yeah, flex Jeremiah out, put Jadarian in the backfield, vice versa. Like, don't go away from what's going to make your team more dangerous. And it seems like he did that, not going to certain motions and formations that they did last week.
Let me ask you a quick question, guys, because obviously I was watching the game, but there were certain things that, I probably missed. So, because I was driving, but when they would have Love split out, right? And they were trying to get him the ball on the outside. Did they have Price in the backfield or was it empty?
Empty.
It was
It was
empty.
empty. Okay.
It was empty.
Okay.
And see now, Vince, I've noticed now, anytime he flexes out, that's like an alert for the defense. He's become that guy for defenses. Like, where's 4 at? He's become that guy.
Well, and you need to use that to your advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. In the run game, especially. Yeah. Like, use that. That takes some way away from the box. Mm-hmm. Yeah, run it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, I'll just echo a couple things because I think you guys hit on a lot of the key stuff. I thought Jadarian Price ran with purpose today, and I think he ran with authority. He got downhill in a hurry, and he's explosive, obviously. Jeremiah, I think that the defense was kind of keying to him a little bit. I mean, I really do. I think they were kind of sneaking some guys down in the box at times. And I know people in the chat are like, oh, it's because they can't throw the ball. Okay, guys, sure, whatever. I think they know that number 4 is your best player offensively. They've been watching the film the last few weeks too, right? But regardless, I think that for me, the difficulties with evaluating running backs sometimes is it's so dependent on what's happening up front. It really is. So when your offensive line doesn't have a great overall day from a left tackle all the way to right tackle perspective, there are going to be some limitations on how well you run the football overall. So either there were spurts, there were great moments, the touchdown run, quote unquote, to Jeremiah Love, which should also be Emil Wagner's touchdown, if we're being honest with ourselves. Like, it was a great run. Jadarian Price had a couple really explosive runs. There was a lot of good that was in there with the running backs. I think it's just obviously situationally dependent on how the offensive line is playing in front of you.
No, good point. And obviously we talked about the offensive line, and they had some good moments, obviously, in the run game, and they had some iffy moments. But more of the iffy moments for me, offensive line wise, is in the pass game. I mean, there's guys starting there because of what they can do in the run game, and more often than not, they did all right. And they're obviously competing against a loaded box, and they're competing against a defense that's bringing the house to try to attempt to stop the run. Totally get that. And Notre Dame still ran for 270 yards. So, at the end of the day, there were issues, obviously, running the football, but they ran for 270 yards. And again, it's not all about the stats. I realized they were trying to get 1.5 yards when Riley Leonard broke a 50-yard run. So that adds 50 yards to that 270, right? So I completely get that. And we, when we're talking about defense, we're take away that big play. Okay, we can take away that big play. I get that, right? I'm okay with that. But there's still issues that need to be worked out. There still needs to be more consistency, up front. And you know what? And ball security, let's just say it, right? Ball security is a bit of an issue right now. And if Riley Leonard is going to run the ball the way they are going to run Riley Leonard, he needs to be able to secure the football better, even after a long run and getting attacked from behind. You can't let that ball pop out, right? Because they're probably going to go down and score on that drive. I mean, it was a 40-plus yard run, and then you lose the football. You can't do that. You can't do that. And Jeremiah Love, you can't lose the football at the goal line like that. Because if Emil Wagner didn't fall on that ball, they're going to review that, and it's going to be Miami ball. The only reason, in my opinion, they didn't review that is because Notre Dame fell on the football. And it doesn't matter, right?
It was a touchdown. What's the reason of the replay? Exactly.
The only people that are going to be upset about that is anybody with the last name of Wagner. Like that.
Oh, absolutely. I would be pissed right now. If that was the deal, I'd be like, brother, give me my touchdown, man.
Totally agree. Totally agree with that. But look, they need to be able to secure, and then, let's just for fun, we'll just add the special teams in here to the offensive side, because I don't think we're going to have enough to make a complete segment. So we'll just add the special teams into this part, because we're talking about ball security, and the first opportunity that an offensive player had a chance to touch the football, they turned it back over on that punt muff. So let's talk special teams, fellas. I will start off with the positive, because I've been banging the punter. Yeah, that sounds terrible. I have been ripping the punter this entire year about how he's been terrible. He has not been good. He's averaging less than 40 yards a punt. Well, they finally allowed him to just boot the football straight ahead and not do rollouts and, all of those different things. He's just booting the football, and he looked great. And when the one time that he needed to pin him, He did what you're supposed to do as a punter. You hold the ball up and down, you kick it so it has the backspin, and he pinned him deep. Like, let's go, man. Finally, they let the punter do what he was good at and why he got recruited in the first place. And so punting, 2 thumbs up. The rest of the special teams.
Can I cut you off real quick there?
You can. I'm done.
This is the negativity in my heart as a Notre Dame fan. But when I was watching James Rendell boom these punts, my only thought was, why the heck were we asking him to do something else? That was my point. But yes, James Rendell can boom it, dude. Thank the heavens that we got to see what James Rendell could do today. But yes, we had the block in the back on the reverse to Jeremiah Love. We had a muffed punt, obviously, for Jordan Faison. We had a bad hold, okay, right? It was just a bad hold, I think. I think the snap was fine. I think the hold was bad on that field goal, obviously, where Mitch Jeter actually made a really athletic play, and I was like, okay, Mitch Jeter, but obviously that's not how you draw it up.
He did the best he could under the circumstances, obviously, but that was doomed from the get-go.
He had Davis Sherwood for a second, too. I mean, he's not – I know he's not into timing up passes perfectly, but for a second, he had Davis Sherwood. But, no, the snap was low, but definitely able to be handled, and it was just – it was botched from the start. But, yeah, no, I agree. Rendell, it's funny what happens when you start to simplify things and play to the strengths of people on – offense, defense, or special teams. But special teams, James Rendell had a breakout game today, guys. So how about it?
And can we also talk about the coverage team as well? Not great. There are way too many return yards, way too many missed tackles in the return game, in the punt and kickoff coverage game. Actually, the kickoff coverage game was fine because he just kicked it out of the back of the end zone every time. But the punt return or punt coverage team was just not very good. I mean, I was not impressed with that. Guys not staying in their lanes, missing tackles. There's going to be a game, and we talked about this before when I was talking about punting. There's going to be games where field position is going to come into play, and that could very well be in 7 days when they play Louisville, where field position could be very, very important. Those return yards, man, I hate the term hidden yardage because it's not hidden. It's right there. But that opportunity that you give up to the other team in the field position game could really come back to haunt Notre Dame. They really need to get something figured out, when it comes to that. And then they finally get a return. They have to get a reverse to get a good return, and then you get a silly block in the back that would have nothing to do with the play, by the way. They were already handing the ball off, heading in the other direction, and you get a push in the back. Like, guys, you got to be smarter than that. You negated a huge play, and now you're backed up against your own end zone again. So just lots of issues with special teams right now. Lots of issues, guys.
Well, I'm just happy that my practice notes are not being looked at as a lie now. Because after the first practice, we were like, oh, James Rendell is 4.5 on hang time, kicking it 45 to 50 yards consistently. And after last week, it was like, uh-oh. And people are saying, like, I thought you guys said he was good. It's like when we watched him kick traditionally, he was good.
Right.
And lo and behold, now he kicks traditionally. I think it goes back to what you said, Vince. That I believe his first punt, that's going to be important because he flipped the field.
Exactly.
If he can flip the field for Notre Dame, and they obviously Marcus Freeman wants to play to his defense, right, and not turn the ball over, he becomes of great importance, especially as the summer turns into fall and then into winter conditions at South Bend.
Sure,
that's going to be paramount. It's going to be paramount. And
Did you hear the sound off his foot, Sean? The sound off his foot was something different than we've heard the first 3 games, my friend.
I mean, he averaged 47.3 yards a punt and had 2 over 50 and put him inside the 20 twice.
Like that's all you can ask.
That's what you want from your punter.
Yes.
But the problem was he wasn't doing it the first 3 games. And look, at this point, seeing now what he can do in a game, I'm not even putting it on him. That's squarely on the shoulders of Biaggi. Squarely on his shoulders because you were taking him out of what he does well.
But wait a minute, Vince. That sounds familiar too. possibly the quarterback as well. Like this, like you're asking him to do certain things. Let him do what he's good at. That's been the issue over here as well. So I don't know, man. Maybe they just had a vision for a lot of different things that they felt like would take each group, offense, defense, and special teams to the next level. But it's not about your plan, man. It's about the players. What are your players able to do best? Play to that. It's very simple. It's really simple. And hopefully they continue. It seems like they're getting better at that. They had the recognition last week. Marty Biaggi talked about it. Marcus Freeman even talked about it Monday. Like, we're going to find a way to get him comfortable.
Right.
And it looks like they got him comfortable this week. Right. So that's great. Just kick it. Exactly. Just kick it. So now, but it goes, Vince is inconsistent. Once again, this is this team this year. Against Purdue, they almost blocked 3 punts.
Right.
The punt returns were really good. Multiple guys had punt returns, I think, of 8 yards or more. And then Rendell struggled. So you have these highs in special teams, but then you had struggles in special teams. And so now Rendell is really good, but then you have everything else. And, the block in the back was, they could have let it go. But
it had nothing to do with the play. Like, it had nothing to do with it.
But in that situation, Junior has to understand, just put your hands up and wall them off. If you just wall them off. Right,
exactly. Because he did the two-hand shove in the back, and it was like, it's like you have to call it. It's right in front of the official.
Right in front of the official.
Man, dude, come on.
Right. You have to know, if I just get in his way, he's not touching Jeremiah.
Right, exactly. 100%. 100% agree. Another positive, they did block the field goal, right?
Yes.
So, hey, all credit to that, blocking that field goal. And that was huge in the moment, right? I mean, at that time, I can't remember exactly what the score was, but at the moment, that felt like a big play, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we're going to knock the special teams because they didn't play well as a whole, we got to give them credit as well. So the positives, the punter and blocking the field goal, and the negatives were pretty much everything else. Does that sound about right for special teams, guys? Did I kind of summarize that one okay for you?
Yeah.
All right, so that's going to do it for our analysis of offense and special teams. Since we're kind of in the middle of it here, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. We will also have Upon Further Review tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and that is when Brian will be able to give his kind of first-time thoughts on the game. So if you're here to hear from Brian, that's fantastic. You'll hear from him specifically tomorrow night. And then he's got obviously a bunch of written content over at irishbreakdown.com that you can check out. So make sure you are, hit that notification bell so you know when we're going to be on. So again, 7 o'clock tomorrow for Upon Further Review. All right, boys, let's go ahead and jump into the defense and your thoughts on the defense. Obviously, gave up 3 points, and that is what most people care about at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, they're not wrong. Only giving up 3 points. That's fantastic. Total yards, they gave up 229 yards of total offense, 110 yards on the ground, 119 through the air. So Miami ended up being extremely balanced. They held Brett Gabbert to 40% completion on 14 of 35 passing. He had 2 interceptions. Obviously not a great day for the younger Gabbert. And I think the most disturbing part of that entire thing, look, again, held him to 3 points. That's fantastic. The passing, I think they did very, very well in the passing game. But 110 yards on the ground is not great based on who Miami was coming into this game. That was a little bit disturbing for me. But as a whole, happy with the defense. Give me your thoughts. We'll start with Trevor. Give me your thoughts on the defense as a whole, and then we'll kind of break it down position by position.
Yeah, I feel very similar to how I feel about the offense. They did some really good things today, and there's a lot of areas for improvement for the defense. Passing game was really good. Notre Dame secondary held Gabbert to, I think, 4 completions in the entire second half, and they were down. I mean, you can't ask your defensive secondary to do more than that. Edge rushers, I thought, played really well today. Boubacar is a dude.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think at halftime, he had 4 total tackles, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, a QB hurry, and that was in 2 quarters. I mean, Boubacar is a real deal. We said it last show, like, you know, in previous years, Notre Dame loses a starting defensive end, and the guy coming in behind him there's a lapse in production. You can make the argument that the production grew today with what Boubacar did in the first half. So, you know, it was cool to see. I know during the week in the press conference, they were kind of giving their giving their praise to Jordan Botelho and what he had done. And they were like, hey, man, we're going to finish the season out for you, and we're going to play well. And I thought the edge rushers played really well today. Biggest issues for me is the interior of the defensive line today was rough. I mean, Vince, you brought it up. I mean, in the first half, you give up 75 rushing yards to a team that through 2 games had 64 total, which is tough. Mm-hmm. And second half, it got a little better because I think they only gave up 35 rushing yards in the second half. So I guess in comparison to where you were at in the first half, it got better. But, you know, defensively as a whole, I thought they played decent. Definitely they were flying around to the ball a little bit more than what they were in comparison to Northern Illinois. Drake Bowen had some awesome plays back to back, which was awesome to see. He was getting fired up out there, which I think needs to be spread out across the board.
And I needed to see it from him too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I needed to see him kind of break out a little bit. And he kind of had a great series there where, you know, I think he defended that pass and then obviously made the sack on the very next play. I think that's big for him. Hopefully he can build on that as well. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're totally fine. I agree. It was awesome to see. And I hope that energy starts to trickle back up to the captains and the 5th and 6th year seniors that, you know what I mean? I mean, this is a little nitpicky, but I mean, Howard Cross gets a sack today and he stands up like he just gave up a 5-yard run and got trucked. You know, get excited. I get it. It's Miami of Ohio, but you just got a sack. That's good. That is a good thing. So, yeah, I mean, that was a little frustrating to see today. The interior of the defensive line has been, I mean, very, very inconsistent and underwhelming considering the hype that was coming in around these 2 defensive tackles that were coming back, right? The last thing that I'll say about the defense here, and look, I've seen a lot of things on Twitter and in the chat about, well, yeah, Riley Leonard had a good game against Miami of Ohio, but what happens when he plays a Power 5 opponent? But then on the flip side, it's like, guys, we only gave up 3 points today. Well, I think we have to look at it through the same lens, right? I mean, yes, the defense only gave up 3 points to Miami of Ohio. What our job is to sit down and look and break down the areas that they need to get better for when they do play those really good Power 5 level opponents, like who's coming to South Bend in 7 days, right? So I think it has to be both on the same side. Yes, it's fantastic. The defense has only given up 4 touchdowns in 3 games. That's great. And I do agree that the defense is the strong point of this team right now and probably will be for the remainder of the season because they're built to do it.
Well, we said that going in, right?
Yeah.
Now, we all thought the offense was going to be better. I'm not even going to go down that road. But we all said the defense is elite. Or they 100%. Have the opportunity or the ability to be elite.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're reaching elite status, but they're definitely the strength of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's just that's my piece. And I guess my little rant for, look, if we're going to look at this we can't say Riley Leonard had a good game or the offense had a good game because it was Miami of Ohio and Purdue sucks. But then look at what the defense did against a team that sucks and say, well, the defense is fantastic, right? It's improvements need to be made on both sides. And the fact of the matter is Miami of Ohio had the worst ranked rushing offense in FBS. And
you gave up 110 yards to them.
Yeah, there were times where they were just moving the ball at will. And it was starting to look very similar to what Northern Illinois was doing to Notre Dame. Just getting 3 to 4 yards of push off the line of scrimmage before anybody was even touching a running back, which we have to look at as an area of concern for the opponents Notre Dame has moving forward. So defense as a whole played well. The passing game played fantastic. And I'm never going to gash a defense for only giving up 3 points. That's great. And ideally, they do the same thing next week. But I'm here to tell you, if the interior of the defensive line continues to get pushed back the way that they did today against Miami of Ohio, Notre Dame's defense is not only giving up 3 points next Saturday. That's just the fact of the matter.
Trevor, you're right, because they're facing, in my opinion, one of the best offensive game planners in all of college football, who's going to use emotion, who's going to run the ball. He's going to be patient. He's going to do everything he needs to do that simulates what Northern Illinois did with better talent. They have wide receivers that can take the top off the ball and challenge the defensive backfield. The defensive backfield is probably going to be able to still stand up and make plays, but you have to put them in 3rd and long and take advantage of their quarterback, who's very inconsistent in those situations, right? If you allow them to come in and run the ball and go to play action, heck, they were running option last year with a quarterback that's about as slow as any quarterback I've ever seen. But once again, that was him scouting Notre Dame. They're crashing from the backside. We can run this and get to the outside with Jordan and Garindo. And they did it successfully. Now this year, I'm sure he's going to look at the film and have something in store for that offense, right? So I think the defensive line, definitely. I want to point to a Don Schuler and that big mistake, but that goes to the youngsters playing with excitement and swag. That dude, they're the swag. Like, why are our sophomores the swag for this defense? Why? It's just, it's befuddling. Like you said, Howard Cross, he gets a sack, and the next thing you know, it's like, oh, ho hum, right? I love Donovan Heinisch. Love the kid. Love the effort. But look, hey, you get pushed. Consistently, you got pushed back today when you were in the game. Riley Mills. I'm sorry. When are we going to get a signature Riley Mills game?
Man.
When?
4 games in.
When?
Man.
Can we get one? In your senior year, just one. That's all I'm asking.
We're also
for.
5. We're 5 years in, Vince. Not.
Well, no, that's fair. It's like I want to send out a search party for 99. Like who? Like where are you, man? Like it's just like you're taking up space.
So I don't know if the return. I don't know how many snaps Gabriel Rubio gets next week. If he returns next week, maybe 15 to 20, and I'm sure they could be impactful.
He could be
in the run game,
very impactful if he can come back and be ready to go. Like I don't want an 80% Rubio just because he's a bigger body and all of that. Like if he's ready to go, he's 100%, even 95 or whatever. Those percentages are so silly when you ask somebody what they are. But like if he's ready to go, I think he could be extremely impactful, and they could very much use him up the middle on rundowns. No doubt about it. And
I think Double R, you can take it from here. I think what we see consistently from the interior of the defensive line, which goes to the coaching, they don't get off blocks, man. They don't get off blocks, especially against, the zone concept. They just get pushed back, move sideways, don't penetrate, don't use their quickness to get cross face like Miami, Ohio was doing to our offensive line. They just sit there and do the waltz with the offensive linemen. And that's not your thing because you're not a big defensive front. You have to play to your strength. And it just seems like they're not able to shed blocks and make plays. And then that puts the young linebackers in a position to have to make plays 3, 4, 5 yards down the field. So,
yeah. Well, I would say it's twofold defensively for me. I think every game that I'm kind of watched now, I kind of come away with 2 takeaways. One is that I think that the secondary is an elite group. Like, why would you ever throw the ball at Xavier Watts or Benjamin Morrison? Like, why would you honestly do that? But like, then my answer is because Christian Gray is a budding superstar at the other corner, man. Like he is on course to being a just fantastic football player, Christian Gray. Don Schuler obviously had some big time moments. He makes the one mental mistake on the sideline that I characterize as youth, but I was happy actually to see Marcus Freeman kind of be outward with like his displeasure with that moment. Cause like, there's just a lot of times where I'm just like, Coach Freeman, like, I want to see more emotion, man. Like, I just want to see a little bit more emotion on the sideline sometimes. So I think the secondary is fantastic. I mean, it truly is. Like, at some point, we're going to have the conversation of like, we're not throwing at 20. We can't throw at 29. Who are we going to throw at anymore? Because even like Jordan Clark's played very solidly in the nickel for the most part too, right? So like at some point you're just going to be kind of like, oh, I don't know where to throw it anymore. Defensively, the interior guys have just kind of, I mean, like Howard Cross had a sack in this game, right? But he was just like hit or miss. Riley Mills has just kind of been MIA most of the season so far. I wrote an article at AZ Sports earlier this week, and guys, I'm at this point with this interior defensive line that I think is just underperformed as a whole. Jason Anye is playing very good football. He is. So I'm not here to say start 47 over one of those two, but I am here to say if the production doesn't pick up, 47 needs to play more. He needs to start eating into some of those reps, and he needs to be on the field a whole lot more. You know, maybe Armel Mukum starts getting some reps. Maybe, obviously, you can talk about Gabriel Rubio coming back. Maybe Sean Sevillano is a guy that can help down the stretch at some point. I don't know what the answer is, but interior defensive line does need to pick up a little bit, right? So if 47's ready to go and it's ready to eat into more reps, I welcome that. The defensive line, I think, on the edges has been very good. On the interior, it's been pretty underwhelming a lot of the time. And I think the linebackers, like again, I just think the linebackers are suffering from a little bit of being young, you know, for the most part. But I think it was great to see Drake Bowen have a couple big plays. I think it was great to see just kind of Kingston over the last couple weeks have some plays as well. So it's a youth movement outside of Jack Kaiser. It's going to take some time, but just overall, just like the quick hitters are secondary elite. Interior defensive line, linebacker play needs to get better because you cannot give up 75 yards in the first half to a team that was averaging 30 yards a game rushing and less than 2 yards a carry and give up 5 yards a pop. That's how you want to talk about like translates to the next games. Louisville is going to run the football. They're going to run the football a lot. So if you had trouble like that against Miami, Ohio, if we're doing like the transitive property of like, hey, how's that going to look like against Louisville? I think it'll look different. But you have to get ready to stop the run because Jeff Brom and that Louisville attack is going to come to run the football. And I don't think they're going to test 20-0 very much. So you need to be ready to play up front to win that football game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Look, it bothers me a little bit when I hear Al Golden kind of make mention of the fact that, you know, run defense is kind of not an afterthought, but like that's not what he's like super concerned about, and it kind of takes care of itself. You know, things like that. That bothers me because, you know, we're going to be or Notre Dame's going to be in trouble at some point when a team is just going to run it down their throat and work the clock. And I mean, look, it's what happened at the end of the game for NIU, right? They didn't throw the ball to, you know, move the ball the 30 yards that they needed to move it. They ran the ball and took 5.5 minutes off the clock. Like they controlled it. They controlled the game and they controlled the defense in that moment. And that's just what worries me about the future. Look, the defense overall played well. They did. They played well. They held the team to 3 points. They did all of that. I totally understand it. I get it, especially in the second half. The first half gave up way too many yards on the ground. And a better team that's not Miami, Ohio, it could take advantage of that. So that's what worries me about the future, to be perfectly honest with you. Again, we're nitpicking a good defense. There's no doubt about it. But if you want to be an elite defense, you've got to shore up the run game.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Notre Dame, obviously, the strength of their defense is their secondary, but you need to put your defense in a position to where offenses start playing into the hands of the strength of your defense. And if a team is able to just gouge you for 4 or 5 yards at a time, it's very easy to not go to the passing game, right? Like if I'm an offensive coordinator game planning against Al Golden and that squad, I'm not throwing the ball unless I absolutely have to, because what Notre Dame's defense has shown in the last, you know, really the last 3 out of 4 games is they can move the ball on you if you run, especially if you throw in a pre-snap motion behind it. Those are a lot of issues that need cleaned up. So overall, I will say I think that this is a good spot to be in if we're nitpicking something of a defense that just gave up 3 points, right? But there are a lot of holes. You can't just look at it in a vacuum and say, well, they gave up 3 points. The defense played perfect today. Because I just don't think that's fair.
It's not fair. And when you analyze a game, it's not just all sunshine and lollipops. Like I have yet, look, Trevor, Ryan, you know, Sean, everybody, I don't think a perfect game has ever been played. I'll just say that. A perfect game has never been played in football. But there's always something that you can do better. There's always something that you can nitpick. And it just so happens that right now Notre Dame needs to do a better job of defending the run. That they need to get better at it. They just absolutely need to get better at it. So it's something that they can get better at. I think like you said, the return of Gabriel Rubio can definitely help with that. We'll see if he's available against Louisville, because I can guarantee you that Coach Brahm at Louisville is a very, very good offensive mind. He will watch Notre Dame's film and he will figure out a way to move the ball on this defense. So you have to then, Al Golden, counter with, okay, this is what he sees. So now we need to counter and be better and stop them. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at with the defense. Look, this defense is really, really good. They're really good, and especially when a team tries to throw the football. They're really good. And as long as that's the case, Notre Dame's going to be in every single game. They're going to be in every game. I just want them to be a little bit better. I'm sorry. Any other comments about the defense, fellas?
I mean, again, like just kind of some quick characterization. I think that we have found two young superstars. If we're kind of like being positive for a second, we know who Benjamin Morrison is. We know who Xavier Watts is. Those are the two best players on your defense right now, in my opinion. But we have found the two next studs that we're going to be talking about all next offseason. That is Christian Gray at corner, who should have like 4 or 5 interceptions this year if he could catch the football. But like either way, a lot of pass breakups so far. He had his first interception on the deep ball today, which is a fantastic play. And guys, it has been too long since we had a true difference maker on the edge in the sense of being able to win an outside shoulder with speed, flexibility, and explosiveness. And that is Boubacar Traore. He is going to be great. I mean, I'm not trying to get too hyperbolic with him, but he's got 3 sacks in the last 2 years. And I think that kid is going to be a stud, like a kid that we look back on in a couple years and say like, wow, flipping him from BC, who was he originally committed to, like that was a major W for this Notre Dame football team, because he is the Viper that I think Notre Dame has been missing for several years. And that's not even including what Bryce Young are going to bring. That's not even including what guys like Logan Thomas are going to be long-term. Notre Dame has found their Viper of the future. And I don't want to ever say there's a silver lining to a player getting hurt, because Jordan Botelho was playing good football, man, but it's not a bad thing that we get to see number 5 play on the edge right now for Notre Dame. He is playing at a high level. He's going to make some mistakes, but then he's going to make offensive tackles look silly in a lot of reps. So we have found 2 young superstars, Christian Gray, Boubacar Traore. That is the massive victories. That's not even including Adon Schuler, who's been very good. That's not even counting Kingston Viliamoasa, who has had some incredible highs. It's not even counting Drake Bowen, who had a couple incredible flash plays today. But we have 2 guys that I think all next offseason, we're going to be talking about All-Americans. We're probably going to be talking from the NFL draft perspective as well. Christian Gray, Boubacar Traore, great to see them play in big plays today.
Yeah, Ryan, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. It's easy to talk about Ben Morrison and Xavier Watts, but my biggest thing going into this season was who was going to join them, right? Who is going to be the next guy, the next man in, essentially. And it's really exciting to look at guys like Boubacar and look at guys like Kingston Viliamoasa, guys that are coming onto the scene at a very young age who have a lot of ball left to be played in South Bend. So that's when I mean like we're nitpicking the things. Like it's because Notre Dame has the talent to nip a lot of those things in the butt, right? Which is a really good spot to be in. And if they can clean up those things with how young they are across the board, because the talent shows. Right? The talent, the athleticism, the speed, and the length all show, and it's really exciting. So I'm not going to beat it too much to death, but Ryan, I agree with you 100%.
I love the young guys. Some of these veterans need to step up. Like that's at the bottom line for me as far as what this defense is for this year, not even just in this game, but I think throughout the 4 games that we've had a chance to see, defense has been good. Defense has been good. They could be a heck of a lot better if some of the captains, some of the 5th years, some of the guys that have been doing this for a while, right? We were all excited when 2 particular defensive linemen decided to come back this year. We were very, very excited. I don't know if that excitement level is right there right now because of the play of these guys right now, right? I mean, Cross and Mills have been Mills. Obviously, he flashed today. I don't know. Again, I want to go back and watch the film. He flashed. I don't know if he was good the entire game. Mills is
The
absent.
good news, Vince. The
Yeah.
good news. The all 22 for Notre Dame is already out, baby. I just checked a
Wow.
few minutes ago. It's already out.
Not
Yes,
messing
sir.
around. I like that. Not messing around. So we're going to have to go back and look, but at the end of the day, some of these older guys are going to have to step up and play, especially on the front. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If they do that, then this defense is going to be even better, and we should be good to go, defensively. So anybody specific, you guys have kind of touched on it, but like anybody that you would give like a game ball to or whatever on the defensive side of the ball?
Christian Gray for me, man. I mean, because it's hard because I think Boubacar had a great game, obviously, and he was super just impressive. But like for me, I really came out of this game like I'm almost ready to tell the national landscape for a second, and I'm actually kind of going to probably write an article about this. Benjamin Morrison's great, but Christian Gray is heading towards elite very quickly, man. He has been stellar through 4 games. He made obviously that big pass breakup at the end against Texas A&M. He should have had another interception last week against Purdue where he broke on a pass. He should have had 2 tonight. Christian Gray I think he's going to be a superstar. I truly do. I think Boubacar is another guy that could be in that status as well. But for me, Christian Gray, I thought was tremendous today. Just a fantastic football player.
Trevor, you got anybody?
Yeah, mine's going to go to Boubacar for the sole purpose of I feel like it's just been so long since Notre Dame has had that game changer on the edge. I mean, Isaiah Foskey, probably from a pass rushing standpoint. Javonte Jean-Baptiste played really well last year for what we thought he was going to be when he came to South Bend. But Boubacar played a heck of a game today, man. And I think Notre Dame as a whole, I think they finished with 4 sacks on the game today, if I'm not mistaken. And Boubacar had 2 of them in the first half.
Yep.
So let the big dog eat, let him pin his ears back and get after the quarterback, man. I'm excited to see where he goes. But, like I said before, sometimes when you have a player like Jordan Botelho who's playing really, really good football, a guy like him gets hurt. Obviously, every head coach preaches next man in, but I think Notre Dame's defense is at a spot where they found something in Boubacar, and it's going to be really exciting to watch him.
I'll take a different route, and I'll go with an actual veteran. I'll go with Xavier Watts, just to be different than you guys, because you guys are spot on. But you know what? Xavier Watts had 2 pass breakups. He had a forced fumble. I think he had, 3 tackles. They were all solos.
Vince, why would you ever throw at him? I just
Exactly.
don't understand.
100%.
They were literally, it was like a 3rd down, I think, in the second half. And it was, I think it was a single high look. And I think Schuler was at single high, or maybe it was Rod Hurd. I can't remember who it was, but it was Xavier Watts on the slots about like 8 yards off or something. And they threw it. And I think it was an errant throw, but like, I'm just watching. I'm just like, Watts blanketed the dude. In my mind, I'm just like, if it's a big 3rd down play, because it was still within striking distance. I think it was like 21-3 at that point or something like that, maybe 14-3. I'm just like, why would you throw it 0? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. It's just not smart. It's not.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And you know what? He's come to play every single game. Like he has come to play every single game. So when I say that certain, veterans aren't playing like they should be, I am not talking about 0. That is for sure, because Xavier Watts comes to play every single week.
Another guy that's kind of flown under the radar that I just wanted to give a quick shout out to real quick. I think Jordan Clark, especially for his size, is a really good tackler, man. I mean, he's able to make tackles in space. Coverage, it's, little bit of work there, but I mean, Notre Dame was looking for somebody to kind of fill that Thomas Harper-esque role. And I think Jordan Clark, for being a guy that's 5'10", $182, is a really sure tackler. I mean, he had a really good open field tackle today on a tight end that was like 6'4", 6'5", 250. And I just think that goes under the radar sometimes. I think he's a guy that I don't know if he's ever going to make the big flashy play. I mean, I think it was Central Michigan last year where Thomas Harper came out screaming off the edge on a blitz and decleated the Central Michigan quarterback. I don't know if Jordan Clark's ever going to be that guy, but he is a really sure tackler in space. give him a little shout out. I like what I
it.
saw from him today.
I saw someone in the chat say that Christian Gray has DB hands. You know what's so frustrating about him though? He makes that sick one-handed catch against Pittsburgh last year, and then he makes this one down the field, kind of over the shoulder. Like that's not an easy catch.
No.
And then he drops the one where he just drives on the football, where it's like basically in your chest. It is a very frustrating defensive back oriented thing that just kind of. Oh man, if he had hands, dude, he would be leading the country.
Yeah, he'd have like 4 or 5 picks right now.
Yeah,
if he can catch.
Yeah. At least he's not letting up plays though. As long as he's knocking the football down, pass breakups, that's cool or whatever. But like, yeah, man, get those hands. Like, I'm about to text Sean DeGray and be like, hey, we need to get him a jugs machine at the house during the offseason, man. Like he needs to catch 100 passes a day.
100 balls a day.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter. All over the place. Just he's got to catch them. But look, the defensive secondary is becoming, the quote unquote no-fly zone, right? Who are you gonna throw at? You gonna throw at Ben Morrison? You gonna throw at Xavier Watts? You gonna throw at Christian Gray?
Probably gonna throw Jordan Clark, I guess.
Or Don Schuler.
Yeah.
But Don Schuler played pretty well in pass defense too. To be perfectly honest with you.
Can I highlight the one play, my favorite play of the day for Don Schuler? So again, I think it was man across the board. It may have been, but at least it appeared like man. Adon was on the number 2 receiver to his side, and Miami, Ohio ran on that side an outside vert, and they ran like an inside post, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Adon was playing the post, and what basically Gabriel was trying to do was make sure he goes with the post and then hit the outside vertical. Brother, he was making this look like man. It may have been man, and he just did his own thing. I'm not 100% sure, but he sold it like he was playing the post, and then he broke back to the sideline on a 45, and he had this huge pass breakup coming over top. I was like, dude, that is you need range to be able to make that play, but that's football intelligence, man. Like Adon Schuler is a sharp cat football-wise. It was a tremendous play.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. I think it was like, I don't know if it was cover 2 man or what it was, but it was awesome. I think the corners today were playing a little.
Cover 2. Was that cover 2?
It might have been. I'm not sure, but I know it was weird. The corners on the outside today were playing a little bit of a trail technique, which I thought was interesting because Christian Gray on his interception they brought it up on the broadcast and they said that he was like beat, but his closing speed was great and he was able to catch up and make a play. But no, I know exactly what play you're talking about because Ben Morrison was covering the vertical route and kind of let him go by. So it looked like he was sitting in his zone, but still ran with him. And Adon came over and made an awesome play. Yeah, that was awesome.
So, I mean, this secondary is shaping up to be one of the best in the country, right?
It might be the best. It might be the best.
It might be.
Not trying to be too hyperbolic, but like the teams I've seen, I mean, like Alabama's secondary, I think is really good with like Xavier Brown and Keon Sabb. Obviously, Ohio State has probably the most talent from a depth perspective, but I don't know of any that I would just flat out say are playing better than Notre Dame's right now. I mean, when you kind of talk about the fact that Christian Gray has taken the step that he has, Don Schuler has taken the step he has, I think they're at least in the conversation with the Ohio States of the world. I think they're at least in that convo right now.
So I will say that it's a darn good thing that the secondary and the defense as a whole is playing as well as they are, right? Overall, points given up and all that stuff, right? Because that's all people want to focus on is, points given up. But with the way this defense is playing, it is allowing the offense to do what they're doing at a snail's pace, frankly. But it's keeping Notre Dame in every single game. Right. They are keeping Notre Dame in every single game. And of course, while we all sit with bated breath, hoping that the offense, breaks out and does something special at some point, the one constant has been the defense as a whole, right? We can nitpick and we can talk about things that they need to clean up and things that they need to do better. No doubt about it. But at the same time, as a whole, this defense, it will keep Notre Dame in every single game that it plays, in my opinion. And I think you guys can all agree with that the defense is keeping Notre Dame in every single game and allowing the offense to matriculate at a pace that we're not super enthusiastic about, but they're at least they have the opportunity to win every single game. So, I'm happy that Notre Dame has this defense. That's for sure.
Yeah, the secondary in 4 games, they've given up 100 yards, 198 yards against Northern Illinois, and one of those plays was like an 84-yard touchdown. and then
Right.
124 against Purdue and 119 today. The secondary is real.
Yeah. Yes, they are. There's no doubt about it. So, real quick, Sean, defense before we move on to the next part. We just kind of broke down the defense. Just want to get your thoughts on, defense.
Yeah, before I jumped out, I just talked about the defensive line.
Okay.
Yeah, I talked about the
couldn't
defensive
remember.
line. So no, that was my focal point. The defensive
Gotcha.
line, kind of piggybacking what Trevor had pointed out, and just working on that as they go into the Louisville game. Which, like I said, Jeff Brom is definitely going to challenge schematically their eyes, their discipline,
Yes.
their being assignment sound, standing in your lanes. He's going to make you play them vertically and horizontally. So, get locked in, get prepped, take your medicine from this game, and let's go.
Agreed. So that's going to do it for our defensive talk for today. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends. And of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com, because that's where all the good stuff is. There's going to be film breakdowns from this game. There's going to be obviously commentary and back and forth, and everybody's going to talk about this as because it was a loss to them apparently. So I'm sure that'll be on the board as well. And then tomorrow night, 7:00, upon further review, and that's when Brian will give his opportunity to give his first thoughts on the game, and then we will break down the film as well, and we will revisit the keys to victory and all of that as well. So make sure you stay locked in, because Irish Breakdown is always going to bring it. All right, fellas, last part of the show. Let's get into the super chats. And again, folks, if you would like to get a question in or a comment, it's got to be a super chat, because, that's just the way we do the post-game show. So if you guys want to have it, you got to give us a super chat. We've got a bunch here lined up, so we're going to roll through them and have a little fun with it. So first up is John A1. Sloppy offense, special teams, defense. This staff is 1-3 this year, preparing this team schematically, fundamentally, and mentally. Notre Dame just had more talent.
We talked about this a ton, John. So I don't want to rehash the beginning of the podcast. You guys can go to the beginning if you want to hear my full thoughts. All I'll say is this, and then we'll move on. I think with Marcus Freeman's pregame comments, I always come back to, I think that there is a passive approach as a team. And that is, defensively, we're going to be aggressive. Offensively, we're going to play to hopefully be in it in the end, is kind of how I view it personally, right? And when you have that passive approach, when you're not the dictator, when you're not the guy that is prioritizing being aggressive, I do think that you're going to be a volatile football team, right? Because you could say, take what the team's given to you and make the sound tackles and don't make a big plays. But guys, that's not going to work sometimes, right? It's not going to. And the way I think of it is quite simply, you can wait for things to come to you, or you can go get it, right? And I think when you go get it, you force a lot more error on the opposition. And I think that gives you a lot more opportunities to be successful, ultimately, when you're the more talented football team. So I think the just thought process, I don't want to call it the aura around Notre Dame, but I think their ideology of how to win football games, I think is a flawed one. Because most of the time it's going to be successful, but then there's going to be some games where we know that there's a lucky part of this game, right? It's how a ball bounces. It's how, a step happens, and how a player trips, or a game of inches, all those types of cliches, right? But it's true. And there's going to be some times where the ball doesn't roll your way, right? And when it doesn't roll your way, you're out of luck, right? Ultimately. So I think until that happens, I do think this is going to be an up and down football team. Why is it a roller coaster? Because I don't think that this team dictates success enough on both sides of the football. I think that they wait for too much to come to them. They need to be the aggressor more often. And I just don't think that they do that all the time.
I agree. Call me a glass half full type of person, but
you're a glass half full person.
I am. No, I am. At least I try to be. I'm trying to be like my man, Sean Davis. Okay. Look, as crazy as this sounds, especially because we did just get done watching a very frustrating football game today. At least Notre Dame can err on the side of they do just have more talent, because I think one thing that would be really hard to say is They prepared perfectly, schematically, fundamentally, and mentally. They just aren't good. And I think I'm willing to put my trust into a coaching staff that has Mike Denbrock and has an Al Golden and a head coach who does have his ebbs and flows, but the highs are still really high. Yes, the lows are low, and that needs to be corrected 100%. I am not here to say that doesn't matter, because it does. It's just the fact of the matter. But I'm willing to put the trust in a head coach going into year 3. And again, like I've said before, not just year 3 at Notre Dame. Year 3 as a head coach ever. He has things that he has to work on. He needs to find better ways to get his team up for games like this. You have to be more focused. You have to get your team more focused by whatever means necessary. But I would rather the gap be the coaches need to go in and make an adjustment instead of them looking at their roster and saying, yeah, we're just not that good. So we're going to do what we can. Like I said, call it blind optimism, but it is nice to say that, you know, we're frustrated with Notre Dame winning by 25 points because they were just that much better than a Miami of Ohio team. I would like to put the faith in the coaching staff, more specifically the coordinators who have that experience, to start to get things turned around. And that's where I look at it.
Juxtapose this regime to the previous coaching staff and the head man, where they said the talent wasn't good enough. And that was the excuse, right? We had to shop down a different aisle. And that was the reason why they were passive aggressive. That was the reason why they played close to the best, right? And now you still have the same approach, but you have the talent now. You know, so it's like, what is it? It's like a dark cloud that's just hanging over the program as far as approach to winning games, regardless of who's at the helm. And, you know, Double R and Trevor, you both touched on it. But moving forward, I just think there's going to have to be some type of change, man. And it has to start within. And it might have to start within at the top to say, you know what? I'm going to have to loosen up, because if I'm going to go down, I might as well go down swinging instead of trying to play it safe, you know. And that is something that I think you have to be willing to. The coolest thing I saw today, and Double R, you brought it up before we started the show. Mm-hmm. And I love this approach. They didn't win, but Miller Moss threw that pick 6. And Lincoln Riley tapped on the helmet and said, "You're good. We're fine."
He's not afraid to make a mistake.
No, it's like, dude, but as a head man, that's the countenance you have to have for your team.
Right.
In the midst of things. So when things get chaotic, they play to where they come to where you are, right, as the leader, right? And that is something that Trevor pointed out. That's something that I need to see. Yep. That's something I need to see. And I think that could be part of the reason why the leadership is kind of melancholy in a sense. It's could like, yo, hey, go ahead and be you. Be you. Come out of your shell. Be you. If that's you, like, don't worry, man. Forget who's watching. Be you. If you need to scream for 3-4 quarters, do it. Get in their faces. Like, at least be you. Go down swinging, being who you are, instead of being passive aggressive and cautious. And no, man, go play. You have the talent now. You have the talent to be aggressive. You have the talent. They showed you. Look, yeah, we fumbled the punt. Guess what? We got your back. This defense, we got your back. We're gonna get it right back. Be aggressive. You make the mistake, we got you. We got you again. We got you again. Be aggressive. Go get it. That's the approach, especially with this schedule, man. Like, why are we being passive? And it's frustrating.
You're super aggressive on the defensive side of the ball, right? You love the blitz, you love to play man coverage, and then offensively, I just feel like it's just like not the same brand of football. Like, that's my struggle. And special teams wise, I don't even think it's that fully either. Like, I don't know, man. I agree, Sean. I think at the end of the day, you can move past the inconsistencies if you know that everybody's playing blank to the wall all the time, right? And they're being put in a position to play fast. I don't always feel like that with Notre Dame. And because that is the most frustrating part, is that, like, there were some years with Notre Dame that they would kind of overachieve a little bit and then they would fall flat against like Clemson in 2018, right? Where I'm just like, guys, like they just weren't better than that team, right? Like they just weren't. They weren't as athletic as that team. They were. 2020 against Alabama. I'm just like, yeah, they could have played better, but also Alabama was just better than them. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, right? There are just some times where I'm just like, I think you play down the competition. I think someone said in the chat, I think you play to what the competition level is. You play up to the good, you play down to the down. It's very frustrating because I just think there's a lot more talent than what they always let hang out.
The crazy thing, we thought that was solved last year because they dominated the lesser teams last year, especially at home. They dominated them. And then they struggled in games where you felt like they were better against good teams like a Clemson on the road. Like, where did that stinker come from? Oh, where did that Louisville stinker come from? Those are the games we were worried about. We thought we had gotten past this point of worrying about our performance against lesser teams. And now we just had to show that in big games against decent competition, we could rise to the occasion and be consistent. And it was pretty much the offense once again. Like, I think a lot of people, defense used to win championships, right?
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago in football. Now, the way Jim Tressel won a championship against Miami, in 2024, you're not going to be able to do that. And I know a lot of people like to point to Michigan. That quarterback was a first-round pick in the NFL draft. You can say what you want to say about him. He was a first-round pick in the NFL draft that made timely plays in the passing game when he needed to make them.
Absolutely.
So there's still a need for offense. And that Michigan offense put up 30-some points a game. It wasn't like they were putting up 17, 15, 20 points a game. They found a way to be explosive. They were explosive today, but they were making explosive run plays. They were explosive. They just didn't have the passing yards. So I think that's what you're talking about. Even if you're going to be a run-heavy team, be aggressive with your scheme. And you can do that. And I don't think they're doing that. I think we already see what it is, right? You know who the quarterback is. Allow him to continue to evolve, but your best players are your two running backs at this point, along with Bo Collins. All right, feed those guys. Those three guys, feed them. Get them the ball. Mitchell Evans got looks today. Seems like he's coming into form. Those are your four guys. Get them the ball and allow this offense to continue to grow, right? And be aggressive with it. So, and every now and then get a deep shot into Chris Mitchell, who's shown that he could be that guy. And it seems like the formula is there. See if Mike Denbrock can be the chef to put it all together.
Well, on that note, Isaiah Lehman has a super chat. Thanks, Isaiah. Appreciate it. Can we please get J Love the ball 20 times? I think that's a little excessive. I'll just say that. I don't think he needs the ball 20 times, but
12 to 15.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I don't want to see Jeremiah Love touch the ball 20 times against Miami of Ohio.
No. That's
no.
Nailed it. Brendan Steyer, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Punts were really good, much improved. Riley looked like he improved a bit passing, mostly just staying in the pocket longer, but he's got to make those easy throws. Still needs to improve. I can't disagree with anything that was said there. You guys?
I think if you're going to play the methodically driven offensive scheme, then you have to hit the easy ones, right? Like when if this is the style that Marcus Freeman wants to play, I don't fully agree with it. But if this is the offense he wants to play and you're methodical and you need long drives and you want to do short to intermediate game, then Riley Leonard needs to be more consistent short to intermediate. I mean, just like flat out, he does, right? So you need to make the layups if that's the offense you're going to be. I don't think that's the offense you should be, but if that's the offense you're going to be, then Riley Leonard needs to be better short to intermediate. There's no way around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes those passes more pressurized, in my opinion. Like, that's even more pressure on him to make those gimmies, those layups, right? If you go tempo, now that pretty much plays into his ability to either run or pass, right? And get teams off kilter. So, yeah. He definitely needs to improve. No one is disputing that.
Nope.
Please don't think anyone's disputing that. Like, we all see it.
Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Thanks for the super chat. It is one-dimensional. It is not sustainable. I truly don't see how every week just the quarterback running the ball is making the team better. We have wide receivers. It's kind of a simplistic view though, because they did throw the ball. I mean, yes, it needs to be better. They did throw the ball. They threw the ball again 4 times down the field. 4 good things happened. So
we're again placing the blame on one football player when there's a bigger issue, and that's all
Correct.
I'll say, and we'll keep it moving.
All right. I like your thought process. Tyler Evans, thanks for the super chat. Can we play all the games on the road, please?
So bad that we're there, dude. So bad that we're there. I mean, what are we gonna say, man? Like when I grew up, Vince, I'm sure you were the same way because you're not that much older than me, right? You were super like territorial in football. It's like no one's coming into our house, right? Like the stupid Under Armour commercial, right? Like click clack, no one's coming into our house or whatever. Like, but you didn't. Like nobody came to your field and dunked on you. Like nobody came and punked you. And Notre Dame again, like 2 weeks ago, a team came in your house that was an inferior opponent and punked you. And they didn't win the game today, but they also came and again, like I think Miami, Ohio came out with more energy and a better game plan early, and Notre Dame had to outlast them and out-talent them in the end. So, yeah, man, they need to play better at home. They need to figure that out without question.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree with that. They need to do a much better job at home, for sure.
From a coaching standpoint, because you guys have coached the game, right? Vince and Ryan, from a coaching standpoint, is there more of an urgency when you know that travel day kind of takes away from prep opposed to your guys being in the hotel, getting to the hotel that Friday night and kind of being more relaxed at home? I'm trying to figure out maybe
like what the difference is.
Yeah, what's the difference? And then of course going on the road, you always have a us against the world mentality naturally anyway.
Sure.
But I just think the prep kind of gets crunched a little bit.
Doesn't help. I mean, like naturally, I don't know, man. Like naturally I think on the road, honestly, Sean, there's just less distractions, right? Like it is like you are, because at home, when you're at your home stadium, everyone's around you still, right? Your family's coming into town, all your friends are here. And I do think that because I think people kind of paint it the other way of like, oh, there's more distractions when you go on the road. Maybe like during the game a little bit, but I think from a preparation perspective, I always enjoyed road games more because I'm just going to someone else's field and I'm just kind of cool, calm, and collected. Like, yeah, maybe my parents come, but like, I'm not worried about like what party I'm going to after the game and like who I'm hanging out with before and like all those types of things. So I think that does relieve distractions from just like a weekly game planning perspective a little bit. Just my 2 cents.
Fair enough. We got a couple here from Aiden Benami. Says, why us? How is this real life? All the season for this. I would remind you that Notre Dame did win the game. Another one from Aiden. We are so close to closing the gap. Not so much right now. Well, I think that was more in recruiting. Give it a second, I guess. I don't know. Do you guys have a response to this, that we're so close to closing the gap? Not so much right now.
I think that's kind of a panic response.
Yeah.
Right. Because once again, if you're honest about this team, the energy and the impact is coming from the sophomore class. And you're playing true freshmen along the offensive line. You'll have a redshirt sophomore as your starting left tackle coming back. You have 3 behemoths coming in the freshman class on the offensive line. You got Amir Wagner coming back at right tackle. He's going to have Gerby Lambert behind him. You're going to have Ashton Craig and Billy Shroud back there. Dude, offensive line next year is going to be a totally different journey. A totally different journey for this team, which means Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price should run like crazy next year. The entire running back room, right? So now it's like we got to get that quarterback right. Like who's going to be that person that steps up, that's developed, that's the leader, that's the energy. Who is it? Who earns that, right? So, and I don't want this quarterback battle going into the fall. No. Who's the guy? Who is it? Coming out of spring, who is it? Let's get them ready. Let's rock and roll. Let the players know this is your leader, and let's roll. And then the defense, I'm like, once again, I'm happy with what's coming back on the defensive line.
100%.
I'm totally happy, right?
Defensive line's gonna be nasty next year, dude.
Heck
I know
yeah.
we're not trying to do the next year thing because I think
No.
that's such a
Like, so that's that whole, well, we were close. No, you're still closing the gap from a talent standpoint. Depth wise, you're getting there. You're getting there. So
I mean, let me ask you something. I just let me do this the best way I can. Trevor, do you think that Notre Dame isn't close talent-wise to some of the best teams in college football?
No.
Like, I think that they could play with just about anybody. I just don't think that they are close the gap from a full scope perspective. Like, I think there's something missing here, man, but I don't think it's talent. I really don't.
No, I don't think it's talent at all. I mean, you go put somebody like Jeremiah Love on Alabama and see how much attention he's getting, right? I think the hardest thing with college football is it's so hard not to look at it from a week-to-week basis because, like, that's the only sample size that we get as fans and people that watch the game. I mean, look at Georgia. They looked unbeatable when they played Clemson. Everybody was talking about, man, who wants to play them? Not us. And then look what they did against Kentucky last week. You know, that's why I say it's so hard not to live that week to week, just because Notre Dame looks really good against a Purdue team, and then they are just this the entire game. Because I'm not going to sit here and say that Notre Dame played a bad game for 60 minutes. They didn't. They won 28-3. There's a lot to improve on. Let me say that loud and clear for everybody.
mm-hmm.
There is a lot to be improved on, and Notre Dame by any means is not a finished product. But it's really hard to not look at, well, Notre Dame played really well last week, and now we've taken 15 steps back. There are areas that did regress this week. But it's hard not to say don't look at it from a week-to-week basis because we watch it on a week-to-week basis. But I don't think Notre Dame went from being like this close to now they didn't beat Miami of Ohio by 60 and now they're this far away, right? That's just me. But Ryan, I agree. From a talent perspective, Notre Dame's right there.
It's like having Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and running the Bulls triangle offense. It's like, what are we doing? They're the two greatest shooters of all time. Run, pick and roll, spread the court, shoot the three. We're not trying to shoot twos. Shoot the three and make layups, and that's it. And outscore everybody. So what if Steph is a defensive liability? We'll find a way to cover that up. He's going to make up with that by making 6 to 8 threes a game. We're just going to blow teams out because they can't stop us, and we're going to run them off the court. That's the talent you have now. You have enough talent to literally run teams off the field. You should just come out and just run Miami off the field. Just go up tempo, play to the same tempo and speed that you allow your defense to play to, and trust your players. Instill confidence in your guys, instill trust in them, and let them go play. That's it. Let them go play, and let's see what happens. I think it would turn out great.
Yeah.
But talent is definitely not the problem.
Vince, I have been doing a great job. We were more than 2 hours in this show without responding to anything in the chat, but I'm going to do it one time, just a single time. My man says, fans see bigger picture. Riley Leonard can't throw consistently. So you're telling me the big picture is one facet of the football team, one single player on the football team. All right, cuz got it. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. There's no other bigger issue there. You're right. That's the biggest issue by far.
Right.
Yeah.
That's literally the opposite definition of what a big picture
how is that
take is.
I just don't understand how that's a big picture. I'm talking about like an ideology. I'm talking about from the top down. But the bigger issue is one player on a football team out of 85 scholarships and then plus how many other players they have on their team. Just blows my mind that is a take.
It would be like Al Golden playing Tampa 2 every down with the defensive backs he has.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, I have cover corners. No, let me sit back in zone. Let me sit back in zone and be passive and not come after the quarterback. It just wouldn't make sense with the talent. It doesn't line up with the talent. And so that makes the fan base feel like that the gap hasn't been closed. Like, we must not have the talent. No, you have the talent. Maybe there's something bigger than that, as you talked about double R, that's kind of limiting the talent in a way, or limiting the output of the talent. And just food for thought.
All right, let's move on to.
And I'm not a Bears fan. I just understand how pie graphs work and what a whole part of a whole is. I almost said something mean, but I'm going to stop there. Look up pie graph, look up part of a whole, and then we can move on from there. Thank you, Vince.
Well, he's the only one out there playing offense, right? Just one guy, so it's all good. Ryan Elliott, hey, thanks for the super sticker. Really appreciate you, man. Thank you very, very much. Michael S., thanks for the super chat. Did you see Stanford? Their D-line was exceptional. Made McCord look bad. Notre Dame will get a very hard game. Well, of course they're going to get a hard game because everybody considers Stanford a rival because they have a stupid trophy. So, of course, they're going to get a hard game from everybody that they play. That's not exactly going out on a limb. But, yeah, Stanford is better than they were last year. That's not saying much. That's like saying I ran a faster 40 2 years ago than I do now. Like, that's not saying a whole lot, right? They could only get better. I'll just say that. They could only get better. So, yeah, Stanford's getting better. I think they have a good coach. I don't think they're ever going to be an elite team, but they had a good coach, and they'll give Notre Dame a run for their money because that's, okay, cool. It's Stanford. But they're going to need more than just an exceptional D-line performance to beat Notre Dame.
Yeah. Clarence Lewis is on Syracuse. He's not on Notre Dame.
He had an interception this week, I think.
Oh, did he really?
So good.
He also got burned a couple of times, especially towards the end of the game. But, I'm just saying.
I'm going to leave my opinions to myself on that one.
Yeah, fair. All right.
But in fairness, Miss Big A is he's a first, second round pick in the NFL. That's a pretty darn good receiver. So
fair. We'll worry about Stanford during Stanford week. Notre Dame's got their hands full with Louisville this week, so I'll just say that.
Alec Ayamanor, fantastic name. Alec Ayamanor,
such a good name.
Ayamanor.
Ayamanor.
It's unfortunate.
Stanford wide receiver. Kid's a stud. Yeah.
Kirk D.A. Anderson Fitness. It's a great name. Everybody should go to Kirk D.A. Anderson Fitness. I like it. It seems, thank you for the super chat, by the way. It seems that most quarterbacks rarely get better later in their career when it comes to accuracy. What say you? I don't think.
I think certain guys plateau and max out their talent. And then there are certain guys that finally grow into their talent, right? And it takes a little bit of time. I think, honestly, as much as I've thrown shade in his direction, I've actually enjoyed watching Cade Klubnik the last 2 weeks. It's against subpar competition, but just watching his mechanics and how he plays the position, he's definitely progressing, going through his progressions totally different than he used to. But they made a schematic change, right? They got rid of their bigger receivers, and they went to a lot of more explosive receivers that probably fit his style.
Antonio Williams is a good player, man. He's a good player.
Randall and Williams, So
and they got TJ Moore, dude. I know he's a taller guy, but he's gonna be good, man.
So it's a lot that goes into that. Of course, the coaching and the system, but more than likely, you have guys that are instant impact guys. Arch Manning was a kid that you knew, more than likely he's going to be a good quarterback. We'll see how it turns out, but his floor is higher than most guys, right? Riley Leonard has all the talent in the world. If you develop him right and build around him, he can eventually become a 3,000-yard passer. I'm not saying that jokingly. I think he can, right? And right now, I think his biggest issue is confidence. That's his biggest issue, confidence. And with confidence, everything. I watched a true freshman walk into Clemson and look as poised and confident as a true freshman can be, right? And North Carolina State might have something on their hands, but that's a kid that's extremely talented. He's just extremely talented. So at the quarterback position, is so nuanced, it's so layered. You could take a kid like Miller Moss, who doesn't look like much, but because of Lincoln Riley, you trust that Lincoln Riley's going to put him in the best position to maximize his talents. You already know that. because he's already done it. You saw him do it with Jalen Hurts. So, yeah, there's a lot that goes into the quarterback position.
I agree. I think it's tough to look at. I mean, what do you define as late in their career? I mean, Riley Leonard's 21. I mean, a quarterback that I go back to a lot just because I really enjoy watching him play was Joe Burrow in college. And I mean, it took Joe Burrow until he was 23 years old to become who he was. So it's tough to say late in your career, especially when you take a deeper dive into where Riley Leonard came from. I mean, he had a really good season in 2022 and played all 13 games. And then last year, unfortunately, he got caught with the injury bug and he wasn't able to play a full season. And, this year it's really they said it on the live broadcast when Riley Leonard threw his touchdown pass to Bo Collins today. They were like, this was his first touchdown pass since September of last year. And it's like, and then he didn't play past September of last year. So it's looking at it with a little bit of context. So, I mean, if you're looking at like strictly accuracy, there's so much that goes into it with mechanics and timing and the scheme that you're in. And I don't think that Riley Leonard is inaccurate. I think he's inconsistent. And I think that he has issues with his confidence to Sean Davis's point. I mean, it's just, look, the short throws are bad. Like I'm not going to try to sit here and say the short throw misses aren't that bad. Like that is an issue and it needs fixed. But but then you also have, I mean, he couldn't have walked that ball out to Bo Collins any better than that. I mean, honestly. And, you look at some of the deep in routes that he's had to Mitchell Evans on third down the last couple of games and what he did to Chris Mitchell today. So I can't say like overall he's just an inaccurate quarterback and he's just too old to become an accurate passer. I just think he has some other issues that he has to work through. And I think confidence is a big one.
All right, let's move on to the next one, fellas. Carson Jackson, thank you for the super chat. Run D needs to get better ASAP, especially before Louisville. 3-quarter games, or 3 out of the 4 games, it has been subpar to bad, in my opinion. What are y'all seeing as to why?
I think the run defense wise, I agree with you, Carson, that stopping the run against Louisville is going to be big, right? Because I think when you hear like offensive mind of Jeff Brom, your thoughts immediately go to quarterback, and obviously he is a quarterback guy, but ultimately they want to run the football. I mean, that's what beat Notre Dame last year. It wasn't Jack Plummer slinging the rock. It was those running backs running the ball down their throat. I mean, that was the difference between that game defensively last year, is that they just fell apart because they couldn't stop the run overall. I would say what's the problem? I think, one, you're a little small naturally inside, right? But I think when you're small naturally inside, you need to be able to create mayhem. Like you need to be able to one gap and create negatives. And I don't think that they're doing that right now. So when you're not creating negatives, you're not doing anything because you also are not taking up a ton of space ultimately. And then I think just on the second level, Drake Bowen is going to be a really good player at Notre Dame during the course of his career. I think Kingston is as well. Jaden Osbury's had a lot of flashes. Jalen Snead has some flashes at times, but ultimately all those guys are very inexperienced and young, and linebacker is a spot that we don't talk about enough. You need reps, man. Like you just do. The eye discipline to play on the second level, that you could throw an athlete on the second level, like a Jalen Snead, for instance, but if he's going in the wrong direction or not triggering fast enough, it doesn't matter. He's not going to get to the spot ultimately, right? That is a very proactive position. It's not a reactive position. I fight back against that all the time. You're not reacting to things. You're being proactive with understanding where tendencies go to ultimately in eye discipline. So I think the second level needs to get more consistent based upon playing reps. And I think the defensive line wise, you need to get bigger if you're not going to get more impactful ultimately, right? Like that's the issue. Luckily, Gabriel Rubio's coming, hopefully sometime soon. Probably not for this next game, but like hopefully sometime soon. He's bigger. You'll be able to help in the inside with size if you're not going to be an impactful tackle for loss type of team. And then I think Jason Onye is the other guy for me. Like I need 47 to play more. I just do. Yeah. I need him to play more. He is your best interior defensive lineman right now for 2 straight weeks. He just is flat out your best interior defensive lineman. 47 needs to play more.
Completely agree with that. All right, next one. From Michael S. How do you expect this O-line to perform at a competent level for the running game against Louisville? In other words, I guess, can they do it against Louisville? Yeah, they can do it. We've seen them be very, very confident in the run game. That's not my issue. I personally do not have an issue with Notre Dame's offensive line in the run game. I don't. They as a whole, specifically the left side, they need to be better in the pass game. But in the run game, yeah, there were some misfits and some things like that today, but they still ran for 270 yards. You got to give some credit to the offensive line when that does occur. And they're actually pretty darn good at run blocking. And now that Rocco Spindler is in, he's a really good run blocker, right? Mm-hmm. And, Pat Coogan doesn't have to take guys on one-on-one anymore. He's going to be doubling every single time. So Pat Coogan's going to be fine too, to be perfectly honest with you. So this offensive line will be fine run blocking against Louisville. My question is, can they pass block against Louisville well enough to win the game? That's the question to me.
Sure. A lot of it too. It's a consistency question for me. It's not a skill question. They absolutely have the ability to perform against Louisville's defensive line. So they showed that they did it against Texas A&M's defensive line, who is a pretty good D line, pretty big too. So yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about before. It's not a skill question. It's a level of consistency question. And that's what I would be more concerned about. So if that is what your super chat is geared towards, then I agree with you. I'm hoping that the consistency level starts to remain a little bit more constant, but it's not a skill question for me. They absolutely have the skill to do it.
Yes. And we've seen it. It's not something that we just think or something that we analyze from high school film or whatever. Like, we've seen these 5 guys dominate in the run game. Right? We've seen it. They just need to do it with more consistency, to Trevor's point. So great super chat, Michael S. Appreciate you very much. John Massey, thanks for the super chat. Leonard 24 stats equals close to senior Eric Crouch. Well, Eric Crouch won the Heisman Trophy, so
we don't talk about Eric Crouch on this podcast. I'm a Rams fan. The Rams drafted him in the 3rd round, and then he never played because he refused to move the wide receiver. We don't talk Eric Crouch on this podcast.
This is true. This is true. Were you a Rams fan when they were in St. Louis?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. I've been a Rams fan my entire life, and I remember them. I still remember them drafting him in the 3rd round to play wide receiver. And then after the draft, he said he's not playing receiver. I'm just like, so we just wasted a 3rd round pick. Awesome, great, fantastic,
dude. How old were you when Eric Crouch got drafted?
Like 8.
I was gonna say 7? Single digits, right?
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah,
you were still.
What do you mean that's what you get for being a Rams fan? I've seen 2 Super Bowls in my lifetime. That's more championships than I see you being a Notre Dame fan. So what are we talking about here, man?
More championships than I've seen as a Bears fan. So there you go.
Tell them about it, Vince. Don't talk to us about hibernation when it comes to championships.
That's all I'm saying. They won their last championship when I was 4. So there you go.
Wide receiver too. Someone said in the chat they wanted him to play wide receiver. He probably would have been a good safety too. That dude was a great athlete. But
yeah, it was wide. I actually remember that it was wide receiver, and he's like, "No, I'm not doing it." He wanted
to play quarterback, man. I'm just like, all right, well, not playing in the NFL then. If you want to play quarterback,
yeah,
sorry.
He got some bad advice. Well, let's just leave it at that. He got some bad advice from somebody.
Sure did.
All right, Carson Jackson, thank you so much for the super chat. What's Leonard seeing on anything more than RPO or one guy reads? Are receivers not open, or is he just not pulling the trigger? Trigger seems better today when he knew what he wanted pre-snap for sure. He went through his reads today. Like 2nd and 3rd quarter, I thought he went through his reads pretty well. And he was snapping the ball off with confidence and accuracy. 1st quarter, it was rough. There's a lot of rough things for Notre Dame in the 1st quarter.
One of his best throws was a dig to Chris Mitchell, where I don't think that was his first read. I'm pretty sure that was the backside dig. So like he had to go front side to get to backside. So I think it's just very simplistic to say he's not going through his reads. I don't think that's true. Do I think that he's late on a lot of things? Yeah, 100%. I think he's late, but that doesn't mean you're not going through your reads. It just means you're late.
Correct.
Well, and historically with Leonard so far this season, his issue wasn't going through his reads. It was going through them too quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So for me, I would err specifically for this super chat. I would err more on the side of not pulling the trigger. And it's for all the reasons that we talked about, of being afraid to make a mistake. And that gets pounded into your head from somewhere. And I'm sure we all know where that comes from. But you can't – I don't think that you can evaluate Riley Leonard being afraid to pull the trigger as not getting through his reads, because if you just watch the game, he's not just locked into one guy and then only not throwing it to that one guy. So I think sometimes when he gets hurried and pushed out of the pocket, he runs through his read progression too quickly. We've seen that a lot in previous games where if he waited that additional second, he has guys come open. I don't even want to say late, but he has guys come open late down the field. So I think it's just a trigger thing. It's a confidence piece. Sean hit the nail right on the head with that one. He's just afraid to make a mistake.
All right. Next super chat from Michael S. Is Mills just waiting to go pro and not get hurt?
It can't be his mindset, Michael. It can't be. I mean, Riley Mills had mid to late draftable grades in this preseason and some priority free agent grades. So like this guy wasn't a bona fide going top 100 player, right? Like that. He came back to improve his draft stock. Like he came back for that reason. He could have went to the NFL and probably been a late round draftable guy after this past season. If anything, he's been hurting himself. So no, I don't think it's like coasting. I just don't think he's playing well. I mean, like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, I don't think it's a lack of effort with Riley Mills. I just don't think Riley Mills is playing well.
And let's be honest, Double R, it's a big picture ideology thing too. Because we're expecting things from these guys and they've maxed out. If we're being honest, they've maxed out. You ask them to put on 40 to 50 pounds. When they get here, once again, it's ideology. Like you're going out and getting kids that are 230, 240 in high school, and then you're putting a ton of weight on them. You're asking them to play inside instead of just going and getting guys that you have to add 20 pounds of muscle, and they're used to playing inside with strength. It's a lot. And then when they reach their peak, it's like what else do you expect from these kids? I'm not mad at Riley Mills he's maxed out at Notre Dame. He's maxed out. Howard Cross, we didn't even expect this from Howard Cross. He's overachieved.
Yeah.
At Notre Dame.
I thought at best he was a role player at Notre Dame when he was young. Like,
absolutely. When he pretty much forced Jacob Lacey to make a decision because he started taking reps, it's like it was kind of an eye opener to everyone.
Yeah.
And so, you tip your cap. We're upset because we feel like we would love for them to show up, but when you really take a step back and look at their journey, you tip your cap and say, hey, these kids, they got they're squeezing out just about everything they have based upon what Notre Dame is asking them to do schematically. And that's a lot. So, I mean, maybe, this is something that needs to be moving forward, needs to be answered from a recruiting standpoint. But, I think it points to our expectations that we have of these guys. If you expected Riley Mills to come in and give you 8 to 10 sacks, you probably would look.
You're gonna be disappointed. How about
that?
Absolutely. Bottom line, right? You're gonna be disappointed. So we got another one here from Irish MP78. Thank you very much for the super chat. Bottom line up front, is today's performance good enough to beat Louisville, Georgia Tech, and USC?
In a vacuum, no, this is not good enough to beat either one of those teams. But again, it's a problem, I think. But ultimately, I do think Notre Dame is going to come to play next week because they lost to Louisville last year and they're away from their stadium and for whatever reason, that matters a lot this year, right? So Notre Dame tends to play up to the level of competition and play down to the level of competition. So I'm actually not worried about Notre Dame playing a good game against Louisville. We could talk about like sustainability and whether that's going to be good for the long term or even good in that game against Louisville. But I actually think that they're going to come to play against Louisville. It might be stupid of me, but like I think that the track record the last couple of years does say that that's probably going to happen more than likely.
At this point, the only problem with the Louisville game is it's a home game. At least Georgia Tech and USC are on the road, so feel fairly confident about those two. I'm being a little sarcastic, but not really, I guess is the best way to put that. But you're right. In a vacuum, it's not good enough, right? But I just don't think they're going to play like this against those teams. They may play like this against Army and Navy, and we might be having this same conversation where people are getting ready to jump off of a ledge after they won by 25 points. But it's not good enough. I mean, we talked about it, right? The run game defensively is not good enough. The pass game overall, probably not good enough. They have to be better. They have to be better, right? They have to be better. So we'll see. Look, the only thing we can all do, guys, is wait 7 days and find out. That's the best medicine I can tell you. I can't predict what's going to happen. I've been trying to predict what Notre Dame is going to do for how long now? It's impossible. I'll just say that. It's impossible to predict what Notre Dame is going to do. So we're all going to wait together 7 days, and we're going to find out.
Yeah. I mean, the transitive property doesn't work like that in college football. Like, it just doesn't. Because you could also flip it on its head and say, well, based on the way Georgia Tech and USC played today, is it going to be good enough to beat Notre Dame? USC couldn't stop Michigan on the ground to save their lives. Michigan passed for 37 yards today. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can look at it both ways. Look, to Ryan's point, if you take exactly how the game went today and insert Louisville's defense in instead of Miami of Ohio's, I'd probably not. But who knows how either team is going to show up. Georgia Tech, their marquee win was against a team that is now 0-3 and beating, I think they're playing Cal today. I think they're beating Cal 7-6 going into the third quarter. I don't know, man. Like, it's so tough to say, like, if Notre Dame played the exact same way today with the exact same play calls and the exact same penalties, and I don't know. Probably not for Louisville, but it's just so hard to say because you just don't know.
And I think that's a great point, Trevor, because I think Notre Dame played awful against Louisville, and it was a one-possession game in the second half. And Marcus Freeman kind of panics and goes forward on fourth down in his own territory, and then it opens up to it. So as bad as they played, they were right there against Louisville. So if you're just using that, and I think that Louisville team last year is a better team than the team they're going to be facing next week. So, football is stylistic in so many ways. It just is. It's stylistic in so many ways. So styles make fights. We don't know how this matchup is going to look. If you expect it to be similar to what Georgia Tech and Louisville gave you today, if you expect it to be similar to, the output today could have been 2 for Notre Dame. If Riley Leonard doesn't fumble, Jordan Faison doesn't fumble. I mean, there are things. If Notre Dame doesn't give away possessions and still plays lackluster, they could have put up 42 points today, right? So, I mean, you just never know. Right? Brian talked about it. You never know which way the ball is going to bounce. Like, Notre Dame could literally have 2 defensive touchdowns early in the game next week and just coast.
Yeah.
Because it puts Louisville in the position to not be patient with the run game. And that's not what Brian wants to have to throw.
And have against what we already talked about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and the offense could still struggle, but I mean, like I said, they're up 14-0 because of the defense. So you never know how these games are going to go.
Agreed. Completely agree. Josh Phillips, sloppy start, but I thought they finished strong. I don't disagree with that. It was a very sloppy start. I mean, I would have liked them to finish maybe a little bit stronger, but it was a very, very sloppy start. I mean, those first 3 offensive possessions were awful. I mean, they were awful, right? And we already talked about what the defense gave up. On the ground in the first half. I mean, it's not okay, right? So that's my biggest issue, I guess, is they need to do a better job of starting off fast or starting off strong. You can't give up 75 rush yards in the first half to a team that had 60 or something coming into the game total in 2 games.
64.
You can't do that, right, Trevor? You can't do that and expect for everybody to be excited about the way you're playing. You can't start off like that. And if they start off like that against a good opponent like Louisville next week, it's probably not going to be a 3-0 game. It's probably going to be something a little bit different. Aiden Benami, thanks for the super chat. Hey, Denbrock, where you at? I do listen to my boss, and maybe it's just me, but if I'm going down or we're bad, I'm going down my way / swinging. I felt like he he did it his way last week. The problem was I don't feel like they built off of it this week. That's my biggest issue. We saw pieces of it. We saw pieces and parts of what they did last week. I just don't think that they built off of what they did last week. That's the bigger issue for me.
I think that plays into what Trevor said I think Ryan and Trevor both touched on it, what Marcus Freeman's approach in the pregame was. Like, why are you talking about Miami? Talk about how we're going to execute what we want to do and then go kick the ball off. Who cares what Miami brings to the game? They can't stop you. You're more talented. Do what you want. Work on what you feel like you need to work on and execute to evolve this offense. That is troubling. That's troubling.
Well, I think we saw a little bit of it today to this point. I mean, you have your head coach who in the pregame is talking about how every drive has to be methodical and Miami is coming in here and they're a good defense that you have to put long methodical drives on. I mean, from really midway through the second quarter until the end of the third quarter, I saw Notre Dame take more deep shots in that span of time than they did the entire season so far. So I think there was a little bit of Mike Denbrock, maybe, and this is pure speculation. I don't know this to be true, but I think there was a little bit of, Mike Denbrock putting his foot down saying, hey, we're pushing the ball down the field. Have to. Because, I mean, if you want to talk about something that's not in Marcus Freeman's identity, it's that. I mean, heck, the dude even said it in the Northern Illinois game. We don't need to be pushing the ball down the field, play within our offense. And then you have this game. I do think Mike Denbrock a little bit kind of came over the top and said, we just need to do this to give our guys a chance. And to Vince's point earlier, like we talked about, 4 deep shots, 1 was a touchdown, you got 3 DPIs.
Trevor,
a little bit came into it.
You know what's funny? Just thinking about that, before the NIU game, he says just play within the offense. And then at the biggest moment, they take the shot and throw the interception. Right? And then today he says we need to be methodical, but then this is the game you throw down the field more than any. It's like it's not even lining up with what you're saying. Like you're saying this, and then the plan. So maybe there is a disconnect. Right? Maybe Denbrock needs to be a little bit more vocal about, this is what we have to do, right? Because I think he knows early on he has to get Riley comfortable in the passing game.
Yeah,
and then he knows that.
I agree. I think the frustrating thing, and you hit on it earlier, is the inconsistency at quarterback. Because last week they did a really good job of getting Riley in a rhythm. The first play was a little touch pass to Jaden Harrison. And the next pass play was a little motion play action. You roll Riley out. You had Bo Collins out there in the flat, and he hit both of those throws. I mean, I would assume he would hit a jet pass for a completion. But, and then this game, it was the exact opposite. All throws under 10 yards. It was, especially in the first quarter, was very, I guess we'll see what happens. And then everything beyond the marker, I mean, everything past what felt like 10, 12 yards was pretty accurate for the most part. Missed a couple, but I don't remember the last time I saw a quarterback with a stat line 30 for 30, unless I'm just not watching the right football. But, I don't know, man. I think that consistency is the overall issue here. Because as an offensive coordinator and as a play caller, you go into a game with a game plan to get him comfortable and in a rhythm. And when you're not doing that, and when the players aren't executing on that game plan, you kind of have to scramble a little bit. I think that's where the disconnect is. It's tough. And that does, to Marcus Freeman's point, comes down to that execution button that he's absolutely hammering. Because there is truth to that. I mean, if you have a game plan where you are needing to have your quarterback in order for him to get into a rhythm, you need him to hit these 5-6 yard out routes, and he's not. That throws a wrench in everything.
All right, Aiden Benami with another super chat. Maybe throw a 1v1. I agree. J Love needs more rock. There were multiple 1v1s thrown today, just FYI. But yeah, we wanted to see that, no doubt. Michael S. with another super chat. Are they conservative because of a weak offensive line?
I think they're conservative because of the inconsistency. They don't know what they're going to get week to week. Unfortunately, I think that's what it is. Again, like I'm going to stay very consistent with this point. This is not a skill issue. Notre Dame does not have a skill issue. They have a consistency issue. And that's where I leave with this. Like I think it's conservative. I think their offense is conservative because it's easy. It's a lot harder to take risks when like you don't know what you're going to get week to week. So I think the consistency button needs fixed. Like that's the issue that needs fixed. It's not I just don't think our guys are that good.
And then how do you ask 2 freshmen to be consistent?
Yeah.
Right.
Freshmen are inconsistent.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what you're going to get. And that is the difficulty for Mike Denbrock to try to cultivate these game plans, right? And like you said, Trevor, you start out with a beautiful set of passes for your quarterback to get comfortable. And then it's like, dude, you got Cooper Flanagan just slamming his helmet on the sideline. Like, dude.
Yeah, he's frustrated.
Frustration, right? And that zaps the energy of the offense. Just that. Like, yo, dude, you can't complete these passes. Now you have guys frustrated on the sideline. So, yes, in every area, the most complete room is probably the running backs. Right now, you know what you're going to get every week. You know the level of execution that you're going to get every week. And so, yeah, for Mike Denbrock right now, it is he's going to be in the film room a lot this week. He's probably in there right now.
Sure.
No celebration. Like, let's figure this out for next week.
Let's see here. DK, just a super chat because of Ryan and Sean's good looks, Trevor's knowledge, and Vince's love for Angeli. You got to pay for me to say craziness like that, DK. So I appreciate you, though. Thank you for the super chat. But everything else, except for the last part, is absolutely accurate. Absolutely accurate. Tyler Evans, thanks for the super chat. Who knew MAC teams can take 10 years off your life? And Mr. Davis, a nice win yesterday over Nebraska.
I predicted it, and everybody laughed at me. I told him, Vince, I said, we're coming. We're coming. I said,
the Illini look good, man.
He won't be baby Mahomes after the game. I told everybody it would be a one-possession game, and we would have to make a stop late. And that's exactly what we did. That's what we did. But once again, that we could tie this into Notre Dame. Look, man, Brett Bielema is going to be him. You know what Brett Bielema teams are going to do. They're going to play defense, and they're going to run the rock and play action you to death. That's it. Running backs, fullbacks into the flat, tight ends, banana routes. Hey, nothing's changed since Wisconsin. He went to Arkansas, same thing. It's like that's what we're looking for from Notre Dame. Like, get the identity and execute it.
Agreed. But it's a big win for the Illini. There's no doubt about that. That's a big win. That's a big win to go in there and do what they did. So, completely agree with that. Last one at the moment, gentlemen. Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts. I'm starting to wonder if Coach Marcus Freeman knows how to build a program. Team building, perhaps. Program building. The inconsistency has me very concerned. I think it has all of us concerned. We talk about the roller coaster, right? It's the inconsistency. It has.
But everything's different, man. And I know right now, I'm sorry, man. If he wins 10 games this year, on one hand, I'm going to say, that was a gritty. They grinded this season out, especially with the injuries, the key injuries, and the inconsistencies on offense. Like, he had to coach. They had to coach and grind this out. And then on the other hand, big picture, you're going to have to look at some of the things that we have been exhaustive about tonight and talking about. So it's like, it's a lot of different ways you can look at it. And you can use an example like Dabo. It's like there was a time where the fan base thought the same thing about him.
Sure.
And as soon as he got the quarterback position right, wait a minute, see, here's the similarity. As soon as Dabo got the quarterback position right, look what happened. All of a sudden, they're in championship games. They get 2 titles. They're the rival to Alabama. So ladies and gentlemen, we all see it. We know what it is. next week, if it is the beginning of Riley Leonard becoming consistent at the quarterback position, Notre Dame's going to be a problem.
Yep.
They're going to be a problem.
Agreed.
It's as simple as that.
Yep.
Like Trevor has said multiple times, it's not a talent issue. It's not a talent issue. We all know the things that need to take that next step. We know. So
just need to see it.
See if they can do it. Yep.
Need to see it week to week. And anybody, people in the chat were talking about, is this a playoff team? Not even going down that road, man. I just want them to win the rest of the games in September. How about that? How about that?
Yeah.
Literally it's one step at a time.
Yeah.
One game at a time, one step at a time. So that's where we're at right now. So we'll see how everybody reacts next week. If Notre Dame gets the win, what it looks like, if they win, that's a win, and it's okay to be happy. And we'll analyze and we'll talk about the game and all of those different things. You can be happy when your team wins the game. All right. I just want to say that as like one of my last things. It's okay to be happy. You don't have to live in negativity to be happy. Okay. It's okay to be happy. Your team, I assume people are in this chat, Notre Dame is your team. Your team won the game today. Take a breath. It's okay. Life is okay. So, gentlemen, any final words?
The last thing that I'm going to say, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, like identity of a football team and playing aggressive and whatnot. This is very minor, but it's also really big at the same time for the culture of a program. This was the second game where I've seen, and this goes to whoever your quarterback is. So this is not a Riley Leonard thing, okay? Let me say this loud and clear. It could be Leonard, Angeli, Minchie, Carr, whoever. This is the second time I've watched a Notre Dame quarterback get questionably hit late. The first time in the Texas A&M game, the guy was ejected for targeting. This time, yeah, sure, his white cleat was barely touching the white chalk, whatever. But both times I saw, the O-line is supposed to have the quarterback's back at all times. And sometimes you see it just from a cultural standpoint of like, you get in somebody's face a little bit. I'm not talking about swinging on anybody. I'm not talking about starting a bench clearing sideline brawl. But like, I think you want to talk about like something that helps build any quarterback's confidence is knowing that the guys that are supposed to protect you between the whistle will also go out and protect you outside of the whistle too. And like, that's a very minor thing for me. And I don't want to sit down and nitpick that. But also at the same time, the way that I look at that is like, you hear announcers talk about it all the time when, they see their quarterback get hit late. 3 linemen immediately are in the face of the guy who does it. And so far, it's happened to Riley Leonard so far twice this year, and they just kind of mosey on over and help up Riley and trot back to the huddle to make sure that nobody gets in trouble. I think at some point you have to kind of take a stand, and I think that like little snippet of that is kind of true to how Notre Dame has played so far this year. It's just like we're just going to like try to do it right, but not be too aggressive with anything. Like I said, I'm not asking anybody to go out and start a fist fight, but I think that's something that I noticed. And I don't know why it's been sticking with me today. And I didn't really have a good enough time to bring it up until now. So, but I like it. It's my 2 cents.
I'll be petty, Trevor. The old line ran to Angeli when he got the personal foul late in the game. Go watch.
Fair enough.
I mean, the fact that you just brought that up, and I vividly remember when they finally panned to Angeli getting up, it was like 3 offensive linemen around him when he got that late hit call. So if that's what you've seen in those 2 instances this season, it's hard, man. Like, the C on your chest for decoration is one thing. The respect is not about what's on your chest. As Trevor points out, like, dude, it doesn't, you're the guy. This is what we do as an operation, right? But your dogs are injured. The ones that would probably do it, Billy Schrauff would probably be that dude. Ashton Craig would probably be that guy.
Fair.
Charles Jagasaw would probably be one of those guys. And, you're expecting the freshman they need to follow the other guys. They need to see the other guys doing it, and then they'll do it. So it's just it's a lot going on, man. It's a lot.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot going on. I'm glad you brought that up, though. I'm glad you brought that up. You know, it seemed more natural because I guess they've spent more time with Steve. So maybe it seemed more natural in the situation.
And and that was the second group too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
So it's a different group of guys, but your point still stands. I mean, no doubt about it. So, fellas, that's going to do it for our little post-game show talking about Notre Dame's 28-3 win over Miami, Ohio. We will be back tomorrow. Brian and I will be back with upon further review at 7:00, and then following that show on Monday. There will be all kinds of film breakdowns posted over on the boards. So you're going to want to get on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. And of course, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your family and friends, all of those different things. And then we will be back Monday night, IB Nation Sports Talk, 5 o'clock. Sean and I will be talking about, Marcus Freeman's press conference. And then, that'll be Sean's first opportunity to talk about the game. And so we'll do that. And then we'll be turning the page to Louisville because that is the next game on the schedule. So, gentlemen, thanks for hanging with me tonight. Thanks, chat, for hanging with us. And just a friendly reminder to everyone out there in Notre Dame land, they did win today. It's okay to be happy. We're all happy. All right. So for Trevor, for Sean, for Ryan, I'm Vince. And we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown